are back. You're listening to You Would Think, the Philadelphia Flyers podcast. I'm your host, Kyle Collington. Joining me today, oh boy, this is a fun one. This is going to be a really fun show. We have a little bit of a holiday special for you. I have multiple guests with me, and we'll be doing more later. Right now, I'm going to introduce you to my multiple guests. We're going to start with the one and the only Mr. Mike Giletto Sr., because you guys know he's here.
As always, Ed, whenever I'm here, I'm happy and my day's going well. So glad to be here. Glad everyone else is here, and look forward to another great show.
As always, you are here. You do not disappoint. But we do have other guests. Now, we have a man who has put some really good performances in on this show. He has been an absolute all-star. I am, of course, talking about 97.3 ESPN Zone, Mr. Kevin Durso.
Great to be here. Great to be here again.
How you doing?
I'm doing well. Doing well.
Okay. It's good to have you back. But wait, you might be thinking that that's it, and it's just Kevin and Mike Sr., but you've heard that before, so that's not really all that special. Today, our holiday special, the Christmas gift himself, Mr. Dom Console is back. How you doing, buddy?
I'm doing good. How are you guys?
We're doing good. It's good to be back. The Flyers are good again, and we're going to talk about that. But before we get into today's show, we have a little bit of a holiday special lined up for you. You can find the show on Twitter at YWT Podcast. You can find Mike, producer Mike, at Mike_Giletto. Okay, let's see. We got everybody here. Okay, Mike Sr. is Mike from S Jersey. Kevin Durso is Kevin_Durso. And Dom is at Dom Console. I believe that's correct, everybody, gentlemen?
Yep.
Nailed it.
Yep.
Okay. You can also find the show on Facebook, Instagram, Podbean, iTunes, Google Podcasts, SportsTalkPhilly.com, Spotify. We're everywhere. You know the drill by now. But, all right, let's just get straight into it.
Hey, real quick, just to put this in hockey terms, we could have played we can play overtime with this crew today.
We can play overtime.
Circa 2007, 8, something like that, before they went 3-on-3.
Well,
I was going to ask who the goalie is.
I think Mike Sr. has to be the goalie because he's too old to be skating. You think he can handle 3-on-3 overtime? Come on now.
I'll be like the walrus in the Geico commercial.
That's exactly it. Well, you know what? The shift begins. We're going to start talking about this Flyers team. It was a pretty good week. Honestly, I don't know about you guys, but I can't really complain too much about, you lost to Winnipeg, and we'll talk about Joel Farabee. Don't you worry. But in the meantime, Tuesday you beat Anaheim. Thursday you beat Buffalo. Saturday night you beat Ottawa in a really fun game. I don't know about you guys, but that game was a lot of fun.
Yeah, you kind of really went real quick over that Buffalo game. They didn't just beat Buffalo.
Well, listen, I'm trying not to embarrass Buffalo. They got up 6-0.
It was beautiful. It was beautiful.
Early.
That was a great week. Absolutely great week, especially on the heels of the week before, which was really rough in a multitude of ways.
Yeah, I think the team needed a big comeback week before Christmas, because if you go into Christmas break on a couple of losses and the Oscar Lindblom news hanging over you and this, that, and the other thing, it can really ruin things. But dominating Anaheim, dominating Buffalo, and then winning an absolute barn burner in Ottawa is a good way to go out to the holiday. And you still have Monday's game against the Rangers, too.
Yeah, to me, there was one main take, and I'll throw it to both Dom and Kevin. What did you think was the one main takeaway from the 0-3 week to the 3-0 week? What do you think was the one thing that was just screaming was the big difference?
Interestingly enough, and you guys, I want to start by saying you guys did a great job with last week's show talking about the Oscar Lindblom whole deal with that. It was, for me personally, having been around the team and getting, I can't say I know him well by any stretch, but I've
gotten some FaceTime with him,
I've talked to him, and
sure.
it's tough to see a 23-year-old kid have to go through this now, and it certainly affected the rest of the guys that were around too. And I was really surprised the way that the locker room was after Tuesday's game. It was just it was very different than what I expected. It wasn't this, they had that rah-rah moment where it was we wanted to win this for him, but at the same time, it wasn't somber about it. It was they were motivated by seeing him at the morning skate. So it was almost like it was almost like getting home allowed them to get back to some sense of normalcy. They got to see him. They got to come home. It was kind of back to business as usual again. And it was they played the way on home ice you would expect them to play on home ice, which was the best thing for them, really. I mean, I think it's interesting too when you look at the Anaheim game. Anaheim's toward the bottom of the standings. They've struggled this year. They were not a good road team at all coming in, and That
they suck. You can say it.
Well, I have my way of saying things. But regardless, for them to go out and call it a must-win game, I don't know that I don't like that term getting thrown around in December all that much. It gets overused a lot. I kind of thought it was funny that they called Thursday a must-win game too against Buffalo, and I don't know if they were saying that from the start, whether they were saying that once they got word that Jack Eichel wasn't going to play, and realizing at that point it's pretty favorable. We need to win this game. So maybe that's the way they took it. But whatever the case may be, they looked at the two games on home ice against two teams that weren't really great with road records and took care of business once again, which is exactly what they need to do to respond to the 3-game losing streak, where I feel like you can push that 3-game losing streak aside and take it for what it is, given all of the things that happened over the course of that week. It was just a rough week, on and off the ice. I think that when you watch this team play business as usual, you see a team that's really, really talented and able to do good things.
Yeah, Kevin, I would agree with you. It was a terrific way back on Tuesday. And one of the most impressive things about it is it's a very common hockey phenomenon that when you go 3-4 games on the road, the first game back at home you would think is a very good situation for the home team, but it's not. It's been traditionally a very bad thing. They're just flat. Teams tend to be very flat that first home game after a long road trip, and they didn't do that. They weren't flat, so that was impressive.
It was a huge morale game for sure.
Yeah, and you know what? That first period wasn't their best by any stretch, and that's kind of been a trend throughout the year, not just coming off of a road trip, but at the same time, playing Anaheim gave you the benefit of doing that. Anaheim wasn't in a position in that first period to really take advantage of those opportunities that were given by the Flyers with whether it's turnovers or whether it's poor breakouts, whatever. They got right on it early in the second period. They got the 2 goals really quick, and it kind of set the tone for the rest of the game from there. Look at them up 2-0 pretty much right away. It's been refreshing. Every game this week they've scored the first goal. I think the stat going into the Thursday game, I think, is that they had scored the first goal in 21 of 35 games at that point or something like that. So throw in Saturday, now it's 22 of 36. That's pretty impressive considering last year.
Pretty solid.
And I also think that, you guys said on the show last week, it doesn't look like they're going back into that roller coaster. It was just a couple bad games. It was a bad week, like you guys have been saying, just like in a locker room and things like that. But I also think that, and I haven't been on the show in a couple weeks, so my biggest takeaway.
Don't worry. And we talked last week about Buffalo being the kind of the challenge game of the week, right? You look at Ottawa and Anaheim, and they're both kind of at the bottom of the standings. Buffalo's right in the thick of the playoff race in the Atlantic. Now, obviously, that team normally has Jack Eichel, and Jack Eichel being a pretty late scratch kind of definitely turned the tides in the Flyers' favor. But you still found a way to put pressure on that team. They were up. They didn't let off the gas until they were up 4 or 5-0.
Yeah, it was impressive.
They did a really good job of they didn't get up 2 and coast. They really tried to finish off the Sabres and get them completely out of the game, and did a good job of that. Even the late goal, they didn't even celebrate. There was a little bit of a fist pump, and they were off to the bench and back to the dot to drop the puck and keep the clock moving.
Yep, absolutely. The one takeaway for me for the 3-0 week and going into it was I noticed just literally 5 minutes into the game against Anaheim, wow, we really need Konechny.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. He gave him such a boost, so much energy. The points followed, the scoring followed. It followed again into the Buffalo game, and he just sets up the slotting so much better. It sets the lines in better order, has the guys playing against the guys that they're supposed to be playing against, limits the time from some of the other guys for the time that he's taken. He just sets up the team so much better, and I think it's just painfully obvious he's their most important, if not their best, their most important player right now.
And I think he also just brings this attitude too. Like, he just brings this toughness, even for a guy his size. Like, he just brings this attitude and toughness that we haven't seen.
Did you see what he did the first shift of the game against Ottawa? The first chance he got, I don't know if it was first shift, but first chance he had.
11 seconds into the game, he buried somebody against the back wall.
The dude that hurt him. What's his name?
Borowski.
Yeah.
And I believe he had
buried him.
that guy had another shot at the game after the Flyers. I don't remember who they played or who he hit, but I remember seeing on Twitter there was like a big thing going around that he had another cheap shot on somebody.
Yeah, that's kind of his game, honestly. But no, Travis Konechny was a huge piece this week. But I think the biggest thing this week over last week is just a sense of calm. Last week, you play Colorado, you play Minnesota, you play Winnipeg. Those games all felt scrambly. The Flyers had a hard time kind of getting it all together. And then in Winnipeg, you had the whole chaos with the Joel Farabee thing and the major and the blah, blah, blah. And there was just a whole lot of things going on. And we are going to talk about Joel Farabee in just a second. I want to finish off the games real quick.
Yeah, but I think a lot of what you saw there was because Konechny wasn't there.
Exactly. So then he comes back, and then Anaheim, you're controlling the whole game. It took you didn't score in the first period, but you're controlling the whole game. Same with Buffalo. And then even Ottawa, the Flyers outplayed Ottawa. Marcus Hogberg stood on his absolute brain last night in overtime. And even in regulation, he played well. But in overtime, he was spectacular. The Flyers should have won that game 30 seconds into overtime. It probably shouldn't have even gotten to overtime.
Yeah, they had like 7 or 8 overtime shots. That's a lot of shots in 5 minutes.
And at least 3 or 4 of them were just absolute 10-bell saves out of Hogberg. He played an absolutely incredible hockey game.
Just a quick question. Do you guys enjoy the 3-on-3 the way you used to?
I still do.
I do.
Yeah.
To me, there's so much downtime now.
Teams have gotten better at
Ottawa
being
didn't
a little
touch the puck
passive
for
with it.
They didn't have possession of the puck for 3 minutes.
Yeah.
The first 3 minutes
that
of
should be a
overtime.
good thing for the
Nah,
Flyers.
It's not. It's boring.
If the
Going
goalie doesn't-
backwards, it used to be up and down, up and down, up and down, back and forth. Whoever got the 2-on-1, the breakaway, whoever they got the goal and they win. Now to me, it's boring.
Yeah, but now that it's a couple years, a lot of teams have the science on it too now. Like,
Right. Yeah, I totally agree.
It's
But to
all
me,
about
that's made
possession.
it boring. Right. And then it's made it boring.
In the first 2 years of the 3-on-3 overtime, you never saw a guy pass it all the way back to his goalie.
Exactly.
Now you see it all the time because having possession is more important than gaining 2 extra feet.
I understand why. I'm just saying it's become boring. Well, not boring. It's become more boring than it used to be. It used to be
it's a
just
little more,
light
it's
your
a little
hair on
more
fire and
plotting.
go.
It's not quite as breakneck. I'll agree with that. But at the same time, I'll take the situation that has my team with the puck for 3 minutes.
Well,
The fact that
everybody
Ottawa
would,
didn't
but-
touch the puck for 3 minutes, that means the Flyers had it, and the Flyers put a
I
bunch of really
understand.
good chances on. So I'll take that any day of the week over breakneck, honestly, because, yeah, sure, I love hockey and I love watching the 3-on-3, but I like watching my team win more. Maybe that's just me.
I understand.
Look, I think the 3-on-3 is still very exciting, and maybe it's the in-person value of it. When you can see, when I watch a 3-on-3 from my vantage point, you
Yeah,
see
we get it. You go to a lot of games.
But when you can see the whole ice and you see the opportunity to break out on an odd man rush, that is heart racing.
You see how wide open
whether
it is.
turns into
Yeah.
it turns into an odd man rush or not, it's still heart racing just to see the space on the ice. I do think it presents, like the 3-on-3 that the Flyers had against Montreal, where you get space so Ivan Provorov can do what he did. That creates exciting moments too. I think that in the 3-on-3 against Ottawa, you had probably, I'll say, 3 really good chances where it would have turned into a spectacular finish. Hayes had one, Couturier had one. Those situations come up because there's space there. But I agree to the point too where it's lost the luster a little bit from the very beginning. At the beginning it was nobody knew how to defend it, so because they didn't know how to defend it, you had back and forth, back and forth,
It was just
back and
wide
forth.
open.
I think that comes out more. In the final maybe minute to minute and a half of overtime still, because
Agreed. Yeah.
that's when teams get frantic and they go, well, we don't want to see a shootout at this point, so let's start going crazy and being really aggressive and we'll take our chances. The first 3 minutes, 3.5 minutes, though, are definitely all strategy and possession and doing what you
Getting
can.
the right guys on the
getting the right
ice
guys on the
and-
ice. But I think that's important, because I like seeing that from some teams because it tells me, like in the Flyers case, it tells me they've learned something from being too risky. There were times in overtime a year ago where they would lose 10 seconds into overtime because they didn't gain possession right away. They missed an assignment. Here comes a guy wide open. Okay, game over, that quickly. I like to see the adjustment to getting the right lines on the ice, making a change quickly, and being able to maintain possession for much longer so you get that opportunity. It does help
And
them
just
win.
Yeah, and just getting a nice clean zone entry. Just
well,
it's amazing
that was the
how,
thing about most of Saturday's game. I didn't think they really got that many good clean entries for most of the game.
No.
I quite honestly thought that they didn't deserve to win the game through most of regulation. Just the way the defensive coverage was very off for most of the night. I didn't like most of it, and I think now part of that I think was Matt Niskanen not playing. I think that presence miss was a big deal, and a bigger deal than a lot of us would have thought at the beginning of the year. But the rest of it,
absolutely.
But the rest of it, all right, you have to make the adjustments. Phil Myers was trying to play through the flu as well. You got to give it up to a player for just toughing it out. You knew it was going to happen for them to have 6. All right, you get the job done as best you can with it. And I didn't think Phil Myers was really a problem in the game. Quite honestly, I thought he had a decent game, all things considered. So
no, he played well.
So
yeah, and
you have those moments.
I do think there was a problem. Some guys on the ice, namely, Travis Konechny, Chris Stewart, were a little distracted. They were a little more worried about the extracurriculars and the Borvietsky and the Kachuk and, kind of the storyline and maybe not so much on the hockey.
Well, for my liking, Stewart doesn't play enough to be that kind of, to be distracted enough for it anyway. I can take or leave his 8 minutes a night or whatever he might get, for that. I don't know that Konechny was distracted. I think there was a focus on stopping him right away from Ottawa, and I think that's why you saw the goals come from Hayes and JVR. I don't think that line got the focus, and they're hurting too. Ottawa's hurting, so especially defensively. So you had no choice, I think, but to counter the Couturier line with Konechny and Giroux than to play Shabbat every time they were out there. And because Shabbat played all of those shifts, it left you with
plays a lot.
Oh, he plays a lot, but at the same time, it left you with enough time to put the Hayes line out against, they're probably what would normally be a third pairing for them or something like that. So, I think that opened up opportunities for everybody else. It's why, Voracek's line gets a goal, on late in the period, and that's a line with Voracek, Frost, and Pitlick on a rebound. I don't know off the top of my head that Shabbat was on the ice for it or not, but I'm going to take a guess he probably wasn't, because I feel like he probably would have found a way to take away the guys right at the front of the net if he was.
Yep. So we're talking a lot about the 3 wins this week. Flyers did also lose one game since Mike and I recorded our last show, and that, of course, is the Winnipeg game Sunday night. Now, nobody's really talking about the loss. The loss, it is what it is, and part of it, is what happened. But the biggest story coming out of that game is Joel Farabee. Now, I'm gonna ask you gentlemen individually, and we'll go into the discussion, but I'm going to ask you individually if you thought the suspension was too long, too short, or just right. One word real quick. Dom, let's start with you.
I thought it was too long, but I do think he maybe should have gotten a game.
Okay.
I thought it was a little dirty, but...
Okay.
I think Dom hit it pretty accurately, and the maybe should have, only I would remove the maybe, and I don't think he should have gotten any of it.
Okay. Kevin?
I'll say one game as well, and let's put it this way. I thought it made it easy because, personally, if the injury situation for the team wasn't the way it was, I would have sat him down for a game for doing it regardless.
Right, and you and I talked a little bit about that off the air, and I knew that was going to be your answer. I'm kind of in the same boat. It was somewhere between, in my head, 0 and 1 games. I'm fine with either. I would have been fine with 1. I think 3 is an absolute travesty. The guy's played 27 NHL games, and you're going to sit him down for 3 for
did they give
questionable hit.
Right. Did they give any explanation as to why it was so long? Like, because of this or because of that? Or?
It's really funny. It's really funny because the Department of Player Safety videos usually do a really good job of, this is charging. He took 3 steps and hit numbers, and this is why this is charging. And in the video for the Farabee suspension, they just kept saying, it was late. It was late. It was late. It was a late hit.
Which is why it's a penalty.
Right. But they didn't do anything, in my mind, at least, to explain why it's 3 games as opposed to 1. Or they didn't do anything to sell me on 3 games. Everything they said was, okay, 1 game. And then they just tacked it all on and gave him 3 for some reason. And yeah, I agree.
I'm just saying that's a theory out there that it's just to set an example for these young guys. No matter how long you've been in the league or whether you were a repeat offender or not, I don't know. That's just a theory out there. I don't know.
I'll repeat this. If that was 3 games for a guy who's been in the NHL for a shorter period of time as he's been and has absolutely no reputation, Tom Wilson, who I absolutely love, should probably not play again until 2023.
Yeah.
No, that's fair.
Yeah, I think it was a joke. I mean, here's the thing about it. First of all, let's just start with the 27 career games. He doesn't have a record to begin with, and I can understand maybe wanting to set a tone for some of the young guys, but all right, you give him a slap on the wrist and you give him 1 game and say, okay, you're back after that. That's punishment. Okay, you don't
Totally
do this
agree.
down the road. 3 games for this is just stupid. And I give Alain Vigneault a ton of credit for not holding back with his comments about it and defining it perfectly. Okay, so they come out and they call it a late hit. They said it was a late hit that caused an injury and it was a hard hit. That's really ironic that a week earlier Travis Konechny got hit late and hard, and there was an injury, and the guy didn't get any supplemental discipline whatsoever.
My favorite is the fact that Alain Vigneault pulled out the stopwatch.
Yep, I love it.
He said our hit was 1.34 seconds late. Their hit was 1.04 seconds late. So you're giving our guy 3 games for 0.3 of a second.
And here's the thing: I completely get suspending a player when the guy on the other end of the hit is out with a concussion. It makes total sense at that point. I understand that you don't want to see concussions in the league, so that's why you're maybe doing it. But
it's almost like we just watched Travis Konechny miss games with a concussion.
Did you just gloss over the fact that a team's top player this year took a hit in the neutral zone, kind of, that was not equally as late, but close enough.
Late.
I mean, it's still over a second late. He takes the hit. There was no penalty on the play. There was no, the player didn't return.
No supplemental discipline.
The player got hurt. And it was basically the same description. So what are you trying to say here? That it's come up more than enough times with the Department of Player Safety. But what are you trying to say? Where's there's never been consistency with this department to begin with. But that's a little ridiculous to give one kid 3 games for a hit that wasn't all that different from a hit in the same team's game a week earlier, where the guy who is a repeat offender gets nothing.
Right.
Yeah, well, and I actually am a little bit on the other side of the injury thing. I think you penalize the action. Whether or not someone gets hurt or doesn't get hurt from the action,
I agree with that.
Shouldn't dictate how much the suspension or if a suspension occurs. The hit's the same whether the guy gets hurt or doesn't get hurt. So if he broke his neck and was paralyzed, God forbid, does that mean he gets 35 games or 75 games? And if he doesn't and he plays the next shift, he gets only a penalty? The hit's the same regardless of the result.
Right.
Right. Well, and even if you just want to look at it like this, what's more vicious? Farabee hitting Perreault, late for sure. I'm not going to, argue that it wasn't a late hit. But what's more vicious, that or Brady Tkachuk cross-checking Scott Lawton in the ribs and then punching him in the head while he's down? Like, what's more vicious between those two things? Because Tkachuk got a fine.
Yeah, it's a fair question.
Farabee got 3 games. I don't understand how those things are.
Well, it's because there's no level.
Because
there's no level playing field. They don't look at things the same way.
I know.
Obviously. Now, I do want to say one thing about Farabee on top of it, because we can talk about how the penalty was way too harsh for the player. I was not thrilled at all with what he did at all in that situation. I understand he's been pushed around a little bit. He got cross-checked in front of the net, and I again, credit to Alain Vigneault for saying it that way. I definitely like the fact that you got a coach here who's being completely brutally honest and not shying away from saying how he feels. I just look at it and go time and place. It was a 2-1 game. You're trying to be competitive in this game. You're making good progress throughout the game. You're playing pretty well, all things considered, with the lineup you have and the news you got 5 days earlier or whatever it was for the team.
And you've lost 2 in a row.
And realistically, I think you've got a shot here to do it. It's very much,
Absolutely. That's a winnable game.
I don't remember if I told you this or not, Kyle, but I remember being pretty disappointed. And talk about opposite perspective here. When Brady Tkachuk does what he does at the end of that game, too, I'm going, what on earth are you trying to do here? There's 25 seconds left in a 1-goal game, and you legitimately had a shot to tie that game up.
Away.
You just threw it away because you wanted to settle a score. It's not the time. And from that side, I'm like, you're not going to, of course, you're not going to sit down Brady Tkachuk for a game, but you probably want to talk to him afterwards and say, that's not the time to settle a score. We play,
and I'm sure
go point to the schedule and say, we play this team again in 2 weeks, and if the situation arises during a game like that,
settle it then.
You can settle it then, even whether it's fighting early or whatever. But they don't want to lose a guy like that for 5 minutes. Even I get that, but
I'd be willing to bet that DJ Smith sat down with him and talked to him.
Right, and I just thought in that situation it's not the time to settle a score then, and I thought that for Farabee as well, because in moments like that, when you go in, like, and I understand he's trying to be an energy guy. I love the fact that he's trying to be as involved as he can, and I certainly see that most of the time in his overall effort. It just wasn't the way to provide energy at that given moment. And knowing the way that the league never really seems to be consistent on these things, you put yourself kind of you just put your whole team in a bad spot with the penalty, because now they're killing off 5 minutes of penalties, and you just saw right there the momentum turn completely.
Yep.
And you knew it could end in disaster, and it turned out that's exactly what happened.
Yep. And we all know what happened from there. Winnipeg scored 2 quick goals on the power play on that 5-minute major, and then they scored 2 quick ones right after the power play ended, and then the game is 6-1 and it's over. And, I don't want to entirely blame Joel Farabee, but I think he bears a lot of that loss because he took a penalty in a very close game. He took a major. He got himself kicked out of the game. And then they scored 2 goals on the power play, 2 quick ones after that, and now the game is out of reach. And he's got to bear some responsibility for that.
My time in place with it was also not just trying to settle a score within a 2-1 game, but also the fact that I get that he's a 19-year-old kid and he's got a lot of room to learn and grow here, but your team just played the night before and lost 2 more forwards. You scrambled to call up anybody you could. You're playing shorthanded as it is the whole road trip.
Right.
You've got to have some mindset to know that you can't put your team in a spot like that, all things considered. There's other not opportunities, but you go, all right, if they had been home for 2 weeks and the lineup's generally healthy and you want to get involved in something. I'm not saying go and throw an illegal hit necessarily, but okay, that's where you go, all right, I'm going to drop the gloves in this situation because I got to stand up for myself. Okay,
and he's done that.
You drop the gloves, you take your 5 minutes, you come back, and I don't think anybody's complaining about that. I think people give you props for standing up for yourself. In that situation, you were already down from 12 forwards to 10 right away because of the situation with Lawton and Pitlick from the Saturday game. And granted, good for the whole team in this situation that most of the injuries were short term. Pitlick's already back. Konechny was able to come back after missing 3 games, which, to be quite honest, I could see that coming from a mile away as soon as they lost the 3 games on the road trip, that if Konechny was skating within reason at home, he was going to play. He was playing as soon as they got home. Because to Mike Sr.'s point, team does not look the same when he's not on the ice. Travis Konechny is just such a catalyst. So you need a guy. You need a guy like that. And from the first shift of the Anaheim game, they put him in a starting lineup. From the first shift, he was on. And I love how he comes out afterwards and says, wasn't the best one. I still got to, I didn't get to practice all week with the team, so I got to get my legs back underneath me. And it's like, could have fooled me, could have fooled me.
You know what? I'm actually gonna use your little Travis Konechny talk, and I'm gonna spring us forward into our holiday festivities here at You Would Think, because we're about halfway through the season.
We're exactly.
We're at a nice little halfway point.
We're just about.
Christmas is coming up, and I'll talk about this a little bit at the end of the show. But by the way, we're not going to have a show next week. We're in full blown holiday mode. But we also have some mid-season awards to give out. Now, who do you guys think the Flyers MVP is so far this season? And, I'll cut you guys short here. I think the answer is Travis Konechny. And I'm talking about on the ice here. And, we touched a little bit on Oscar Lindblom, and we're kind of just going to sit here and assume he's not playing the rest of the season. Well,
there's not a show you're going to do for the rest of the year where you don't mention Oscar Lindblom for one reason or another. It's important enough as it is, just his situation. But he, I think I look at the 3 wins this week, and I just, I look at how much of a motivator he is for them now. You don't like the circumstances of that, but he is a motivator for them, and they're definitely playing for him, and it's great to see the bond. One of the things that it stood out to me when this came out was Kevin Hayes had said maybe a week earlier that it was the tightest team he'd ever been on, which kind of took me back a little bit, because I'm like, wow, that's saying something from a guy who played on a team, all those, the Rangers all those years. I'm sure there had to be one early on under AV's time that you go, okay, you got to be a team that you think you got good things going. The first couple of years that AV was there, they were winning. They were getting pretty successful. They
made a cup run.
Yeah, they made a cup run.
Yeah.
There was years that they were winning plenty of playoff rounds, and you go, okay, that's quite a statement from somebody who's in a new destination. But he really is. I don't know if you guys have seen the videos that they put out on Twitter sometimes of the locker room immediately after the game. It's before even I get in there and things like that. He is one of the most vocal guys. He's hysterical. And what a good locker room guy. I mean, it was not my first impression of him at all from talking to him, but he's such a good locker room guy.
I tweeted this out. He reminds me of Averman from the Mighty Ducks.
A little bit. Yeah, I can see it.
He absolutely does. But, well, listen, we know he wasn't going to say Winnipeg was the tightest team he was ever on. Let's be real.
I mean, even down to the I used to ref stuff, it's hysterical.
Oh, and I was just about to say, you've seen him on the mic'd up. That's a hold. I used to ref.
Yeah, that's basically it. Yeah.
Yep, he is Kevin. I used to ref Hayes, 100%.
Well, since we're on Kevin Hayes, if he had hands, if he had good hands, he gets so many great chances, and either the puck just doesn't quite get lifted over the goalie's pads, or he's got the open net and just doesn't quite loses possession. He gets a tremendous amount of chances. God bless him. If he had Oshie's hands, he'd be a 100-point guy.
And talking about Kevin Hayes, and I know we kind of got away from the games this week, but from your favorite player, Jake Voracek, what a pass on that goal.
I'm trying to remember the goal.
The first one of the Ottawa game.
The Ottawa game?
Yeah, it was a hell of a pass.
The lead pass really up the ice off of the save by Elliott, yeah.
Okay.
And, I know we've talked a lot about Jake Voracek. He's a little bit of a, let's say, contentious figure on this show.
I say for what it is, he's been way better this year. Go ahead.
I agree. But we've talked a lot about how he's strong in the puck and he's good against the wall. Kevin Hayes is up there too, man. If those two are both out there, good luck getting the puck back.
As I was watching Thursday's game, I remember whether you want to go with the setup on JVR's first goal or the setup on the Niskanen goal. Pick one. It doesn't really matter. But I'm watching him work along the wall, and my thought process was, when was the last time there was a forward who you were this confident with when he had the puck that he was not going to lose it?
He's insane.
He's so good at puck control, and as I'm watching him work, you go, even when it looks like that situation where a guy should be panicked, a guy should find, he's going to find a way to lose it. We've seen Giroux try to do it sometimes, and Giroux's pretty decent at handling the puck, but he will lose it after enough time if he doesn't have the help behind him.
He doesn't have the pure strength.
Right, exactly. And some of that size. I mean, Kevin Hayes is significantly taller than Giroux is and significantly stronger. And that's not a knock on Giroux. It's just the way that it is. It's, because Giroux, I think, is, especially from his early years, was known to be a tenacious player on the forecheck like that way back early in his career when he was still, approaching top-line center status before the move to the wing and all that stuff. I don't know that there's been a guy in a long time that's been where you feel that confident when he's got the puck that he's going to find a way to make something happen and he's not going to turn it over or lose it. And even when he looks like he's lost it for a split second, he comes back and he gains control again, and someone's going to get positioning with enough time. It's crazy.
But guys, his career high is 55 points, and he's definitely overpaid.
Look, again, it's only 55 points because of his hands. The rest of his game is a 100-point guy.
That's fair. And also, I think his style of play, people also talked about the length of the contract being potentially problematic. Unless he starts breaking down physically a la Wayne Simmons, which could happen, his play style is going to hold up really, really well as he ages, because it's really not. He just puts himself in such a good spot to play the puck, and he does such a good job of getting the puck out of dangerous situations.
Yeah, and aside from points, there's so many other things that he does to help you win hockey games.
I don't see that because I don't think he plays the same style as Wayne Simmons by any stretch. He's not the net front. He's not the net front guy getting beat around like that. And because of that, I don't think his health is going to be near as much of it. It would have to be something structurally, not the constant beating and banging at the front of the net that Simmons had to go through, and the potential to be hit by a shot from your own teammate or something like that. I mean, Simmons got injuries from getting hit by shots from Mark Streit and Ghost and things like that. Not Kevin Hayes.
I just meant unless he physically breaks down, he's going to continue to be very effective throughout the length of that contract, I think. But all right. So
one more thing about Kevin Hayes. One of my favorite things, obviously I keep saying on the show, he's a leader. He wears the A on his jersey. That's one of my favorite things about him, and obviously everything else you guys said.
Yep. All right, let's get back on topic with these awards here. Who's your Flyers MVP for the season so far? I said Travis Konechny. you guys can go as is. Let's start with Mike Sr.
If I have to give you a name, I would say Konechny, but possibly their MVP is just goaltending, period. But I'll still go MVP of the team, Konechny.
Okay. Kevin, what do you think?
I'd say Konechny as well, just because as soon as you lost him for a stretch of time, you saw what a difference he makes. That being said, I think a guy who's a close second is Ivan Provorov.
Sure.
Yeah, that's entirely fair.
I was just gonna say obviously Konechny, but I was gonna go off of what it's something different than what you guys said. I was gonna say Provorov. If not Konechny, then Provorov.
Okay, so we have Travis Konechny as our winner.
You're not 20-11-4 or thereabouts close. I have to be real close there with what they are. If you don't have more than one guy that you can name.
Absolutely,
correct.
Of course.
And here's the thing, to Mike Senior's point, to say goaltending collectively, the only reason I stayed away from a goaltender is because of the fact that both have been so good that I can't even give give one particular guy. I think both have been
that's why both have been so
good. It's actually a surprise,
Definitely more than one or two guys, that contribute to this.
Yeah, agreed.
Okay, so now that we've handled that, let's move on. This question might be pretty similar. Who do you think ends the year for the Flyers? Who do you think ends the year with the most points? Right now, just a little catch up. I'll run through the top 5 here real quick. Ivan Provorov is 5th on the team with 22 points. Claude Giroux is 4th with 24. Voracek is 3rd with 26. Sean Couturier is 2nd with 28 points, and leading the way is Travis Konechny with 32 points so far, and he's missed some time. Travis Konechny has been very, very good. I think he's probably a favorite to just take it home, but I think Sean Couturier is going to have a really big second half. That's just me.
I think Konechny's 32 and 32, right? Like 32 points in 32 games or something?
Has he played 32 games?
33.
He has played 33 games.
Right, okay.
It was
point per game.
only because he went scoreless in Ottawa. That was the only reason. After the Buffalo game, he was 32 and 32, which was very impressive.
Yeah, he's got 11 goals and 21 assists in 33 games. He's on pace to finish with, 25-ish goals and right around 80 points, which, that looks really, really good considering you look at his contract number. Signing him before this breakout season here, signing him long-term, might be the best move the Flyers have made.
And people thought
recently.
That was overpaid.
I looked at those two contracts for both Provorov and Konechny and said immediately, these deals are going to look fantastic
insane, especially as the cap keeps going up. Oh yeah.
Highest paid. You don't even know who Mike Connolly is. You know what I mean?
No.
He's the highest paid NBA player. Just, I don't know.
There are players on NBA benches, 11th guys off the benches, making more than Sidney Crosby's making. Like, I know. Probably making more than Connor McDavid's making, honestly.
Yeah, but it's all based on what the revenue
irrelevant.
is. It's all based on revenue. The NHL doesn't
but either
raise
way,
the revenue that the NBA does. Right. If you had 1 billion Japanese people who were into hockey, these players would be making $30 million a year.
But either way, that contract looks fantastic. Travis Konechny in the first year of a long-term extension, that looks absolutely incredible. He's almost point per game. Where do you guys think he's going to end up at the end of the year in terms of team lead and scoring?
If he's not the team leader in scoring, one of two things have happened. It's all gone terribly wrong, or Giroux and Voracek are going to continue to play the way they are and increase their scoring, and it's all gone tremendously right. Assuming it stays kind of the way it's been, he will be their leading scorer. They'll finish 15 to 20 games over 500, make the playoffs, and have a nice season.
Yeah.
That's where I see it. Again, or something's gone horribly wrong, or something's gone tremendously right.
All right. Well, and, he could easily, have another injury issue, God forbid, knock on wood, miss a couple games, and Sean Couturier just catches him, for that reason. But, that's why this kind of thing is so hard to predict because you don't know who's going to stay healthy, obviously. But if everybody stays healthy, I think Sean Couturier passes him, honestly.
I don't see that happening, but it can happen.
Okay. Well, that's why it's a prediction show.
Yep.
I mean, the way I see it, you gave a list of the top 5. I think there's 3 legitimate people on that list that could be the team leader in points at the end of the year. Konechny obviously being at the top already. Couturier's close enough that, yes, there's a way he could catch him. And I think Giroux is the other likely guy. And Giroux is actually surprisingly 4th on the list and has fewer points than Jake Voracek. You know, the common thought from Thursday's game when they beat Buffalo the way they did was, did you notice how, look, they scored 6 goals and Claude Giroux wasn't on the score sheet at all?
Yep.
The fact that they don't have to rely on him anymore is really a great thing.
It's unreal.
Those are the 3 guys I could see getting it if I had to pick. I think once you're halfway through the year, the tone has been set. I think Travis Konechny's kind of, it's weird to say when he's only got a 4-point lead over Couturier, but I think he's running away with this one.
By the way, without you guys looking it up real quick, who do you think leads the team in plus minus right now? I know it's a flawed stat, and we're not going to go into the validity of the stat. Okay, Dom, you think it's Provorov? Mike Sr.?
That's the name I was going to say. Provorov.
Kevin, I assume you know the answer.
Don't assume I know, because I don't really look at plus minus all that much.
That's
but
fair.
At the same time, I know. I mean, usually it is a defenseman. Yes.
Okay.
That being said, it's not. I don't believe it's Ivan Provorov, ironically enough, because I know that Provorov gets so much ice time that it's not really
I was just
him.
going to say that I'm playing against the other team's best player, so it's going to be hard for him to be.
I had a specific pairing in mind, but not everybody plays every game, which kind of comes into play. My guess was my guess was Phil Myers.
Well, Ivan Provorov is second on the team at plus 8. Phil Myers is first on the team at plus 17.
Wow.
I knew he was up there.
Wow.
That's all I can say.
I know that
he was
plus
on the ice
minus
for 17 goals.
I know that plus minus is flawed, but the fact that he's plus 9 over even second place is pretty astounding.
Let me ask this: am I picking up a perception that somehow there's a problem with Myers?
I don't think so.
No.
I think everybody has been supremely impressed with how he's been playing.
No, I felt like I've picked up a media or a talk show.
As
our resident member of the media, Kevin,
he missed he missed the end of a game with back spasms and then sat out that Colorado game for the same reason. It was recently asked of AV whether, if Myers was sitting a game as a so-called healthy scratch, was it really that, or was he still dealing with anything? And they said no, he's cleared up. So I think it's just it might be just situational at best. Now the other thing I don't know also is I don't know really when this whole flu bug started to creep in either. I don't think it just pops up before a Saturday game when you've played 2 games during the week. So I would imagine he might have been even dealing with some of it early on Thursday against Buffalo too. Okay. So maybe that's it. But see, here's the thing too. They're telling us about that, and I didn't think he played bad in either game. That's the thing. Like, no. I don't find it to be noticeable. It's just I think it's just the pairing that he's unfortunately stuck on up until the Ottawa game because Niskanen didn't play. I think he just slotted into the first pairing in that Ottawa game as opposed to the third pairing like he's normally on. So that's my best guess.
Okay. Yeah, because I thought I picked up a few things even in the broadcast that there was some suggestion that, the team may be a little down on him. And I'm like, everything I've seen from the guy, I love.
No, I just think it's a matter of balancing the rotation. I don't think they view Myers as necessarily the overly physical guy. So when they want a little presence, they get Robert Haig back in there, and when they don't, they get Myers in there because they like his mobility. So I think it's kind of pick and choose your battles there. And realistically, I almost wonder if Myers played the Ottawa game strictly because Niskanen couldn't go, because I feel like they would have wanted a guy like Haig in there anyway. Just from the physicality side, you knew you were gonna. Ironically enough, that was all we could talk about that game. 2 weeks. It was a showdown. 2 weeks out, it's gonna be a thing. It's highly anticipated. It wasn't really all that physical. It turned out to be more of the high scoring variety. And for what it's worth, all 3 games against Ottawa this season have been very entertaining. Close games. Energetic. Absolutely. Good goal, usually good goaltending in certain situations. That first one was certainly that case, but
they're a fun team to watch. They're not very good, but they're fun. They're feisty. They're quick. They are
not pushovers for sure.
No,
there were 34 shots in the first period.
Yeah,
wow,
that's a lot. That's a lot of up and down hockey.
They're not your stereotypical Detroit, icing an AHL roster kind of tanking team. Right. They have a lot of skill. They have a lot of speed. They're just very young, and they don't really have much in the way of goaltending. until you get Marcus Hogberg last night for some reason. But moving on, the next thing I have on my list here, total combined goals this season for Joel Farabee and Morgan Frost. As it sits currently, Farabee has 3, Frost has 2. They have a total of 5. How many do those two combined finish the year with? I think they get to 20 between the two of them, and I think that's about right.
I think that's a large number.
Yeah, but I also think they're starting to get a little more comfortable. I think Farabee has looked more and more comfortable every game. I think he's going to come back from this suspension really fired up. Frost, on the other hand, I think he's looked a little bit lost at times, but I think he's getting better every game, and I think he's got the talent to start putting pucks away. And once he starts getting bounces, I think they end up with 20 between the two of them.
I don't see him getting to that number. And Frost's game, I see more. His vision is fantastic. He really sees the ice well. I think he's going to be more of a setup guy than a goal scorer, honestly. But I don't see the two of them tripling their output in the second half. I don't see that. I would say 12, 13.
All right, Dom?
I like them around the 15 mark.
Okay, Kevin looks like he's got thoughts on this.
Well,
so I'm going
because
to him
here's the
last.
thing. Well, to preface it, because we kind of, Kyle, we talked about this beforehand, so I kind of, like with the questions, this is what we ran on Sports Talk Philly at the beginning of the year. And
we cribbed this a little bit from you.
I must have looked like a crazy person with my answers compared to the others I got, because I got answers that were in the 20s. I got one that was in the 30s between the two. And
they thought each of them were going to be 20-goal guys.
Well, no, but I guess the assumption was they were going to play from the beginning of the year. I did not see that for at least both of them. I thought one was making the team out of camp. I thought one wasn't. So because of that, and I didn't realize how quickly they would both be called up,
right. Neither of them did, but they both made it up quickly. It's kind of somewhere in between.
So I curbed the number to begin with. At the end, that's to begin with. Now I'm watching the way they play, and obviously, it's tough for 19, 20-year-old kids to get started and build up that number early. You can get into scoring slumps pretty easily. And I feel really good about my number, because my number from the very beginning of the year was 15 also. And here's the thing. Unless the only way I don't see that being true is unless one of them is able to go on a Nolan Patrick style second half run where they can start scoring in bunches. If Farabee does that, or if Frost does that, because I believe, what are they at? It's 5, we said combined, so Farabee's at 3, Frost is at 2. And Frost had both in the first 2 games he was up in the NHL, and then has kind of slowly slipped down.
Hasn't really done
the,
much since,
right.
Yeah.
And I don't, again, that's not a knock on his play by any stretch. Production is only one small part of the way you're playing. I think Frost has been pretty darn good in every other aspect of the game besides scoring. And, Farabee's grown a lot too, and I see Farabee I see getting more scoring chances, just not finishing on them yet. So he's the guy I think would have the potential to make that second half run. I just don't know if I see it this early. So I'm going to stick right to that number. I think from the beginning I said 15. They're at 5 so far. We're a little more than between a third and a half. Between a third and a halfway through the season. I'll stick to that because I can see somebody heating up just a little bit, like maybe scoring 2 or 3 goals in 2 or 3 games in a row. That kind of builds the number up and puts them right on. I think we'll put them right on track for that 15.
Yeah, I think that's about right.
I'm betting the under.
Okay, I think that's entirely fair. But if you also include the games that they missed while they were in Lehigh Valley, and then Farabee's missed a couple games here, like they've probably played about a third of a season. So Kevin, I think your number is pretty solid. Dom, it's the same number you had. Mike's a little lower. I'm a little higher. I think we covered everything.
There are a lot of good NHL forwards who score 20 goals.
I agree.
It's not an easy thing to do to score 20 in the NHL.
Well, and I'm saying between the two of them.
No, I understand.
Each.
No, I understand.
Well, and in fairness to the
between the two of them, you might get 80 to 90 games.
Well, in fairness to the expectation too, I even picked the number going off of other players who you've gotten used to seeing score a certain number as well. What if Claude Giroux doesn't make it to 20 goals? He's at 11, so I'm not saying he's not. But what if he didn't make it to 20 goals? What if Kevin Hayes finishes at 17 instead of 20 or something? You know what I mean? Like there's guys who score a certain number of goals, and you go, maybe that's not what it takes. I've certainly I've been told this a couple times. From different players, Travis Konechny being one of them, where the focus is not on, hey, there's a guy who could reach 100 points, let's make sure we get him to it. It's how many games can we win no matter what happens. So if they win a bunch of games 2-1 and the points aren't coming for anybody, they don't care. That's the thing. It's like they do not care. So as far as I'm concerned, it's a number. It's a number we're trying to throw on it, and I don't know that anybody cares whether or not either of the kids score in double digits or not. It doesn't matter at all.
Totally agree.
Let's go win games.
Right, and we have talked a lot this year about kind of the depth scoring and where that's all coming from. Kevin Hayes has 9 goals. Ghost has 5. Scott Lawton has 4. Philippe Myers has 3. Raffle has 3. Pitlick has 3. It really is coming from all over the lineup.
I mean, that being said about what I just said about low scoring games, and it doesn't matter how they win as long as they win. Kyle, we were at the Black Friday game. They win 6-1. They go, oh, that wasn't really much of a 6-1 game, and those don't happen every day. And since then, they've done it twice more.
They have done it, and you also beat Anaheim 4-1. And, you've gotten some pretty convincing victories in here.
I actually looked after the Ottawa game. They've scored, aside, the Anaheim game is the only game I found that they've won in the month of December where they haven't scored at least 4 goals into when the goalie's in net. I'll call it that way.
Wow.
Every game they've won, every game they've won in the month of December has been at least 4 goals with a goalie in net.
Wow, we have to stop talking about this.
Except for Anaheim, which was 3 with an empty netter.
Right. This might just be an offensive juggernaut kind of team.
When they're rolling, possibly, but I still see them as a team that really likes the 2-1, 3-2 games. I think they live off of that situation. I think all of a sudden the mindset totally shifted, and it was I'm gonna make the second Mighty Ducks reference of this show.
There you go.
It's like this. It's like going and watch, and it may not be the best movie, so forgive me for referencing it, but when in
the third one,
it's in D3, but still, does everybody remember when they go to the academy? It's new coach, it's not Coach Bombay, and they go, oh, you got to be defense first, and then the offense will come. Isn't that what we're seeing? Isn't that isn't that AV style a little bit? We're gonna defend
Absolutely.
first. I mean, even down to here's another thing too. What I love about AV. 6-1 game, I can still hear him from upstairs yelling speed going down the ice. He does not care what the score is. And no lead is safe with Alain Vigneault in his mind. He wants them to skate the way that they've been skating from the first period. Love it.
There's one way to play the game, exactly.
Yep. It starts with a W. It's all about that work.
Yeah, winning, sir.
Alain
winning.
Vigneault has really, really done that. Well, hey, listen. If we're going to make another Mighty Ducks
MVPs, he probably is the single biggest MVP of the team.
Yeah, probably.
Yeah, we're going to talk about NHL awards coming up, and spoiler alert for the Jack Adams, I'm going to be talking about Alain Vigneault. Either way, let's go a little broader NHL. All right, we kind of covered. Oh, I'm sorry. One more thing about the Flyers, I forgot. Can be pretty quick. Ultimately, where do you think the Flyers finish in the Metro? Kevin, we'll start with you on this one.
Boy, it's a loaded question because when you look at the Metro, I check it constantly enough anyway, especially as we get further into the season because we do the show, we do it right around Thanksgiving. We had talked about it, and you go, well, They're in a playoff spot at Thanksgiving, so that's the first marker. Now we're doing the Christmas holiday show, and lo and behold, they're in a playoff spot again. They're not quite as in a good playoff spot as they were at Thanksgiving, where they're
only 1 point out. They're only 1 point out of that
There's 4
position.
points that separate second place in the Metro from fifth in the Metro. So it really is tight. Anything can change at any given moment. One team goes on a losing streak, it could come close to knocking them out of the playoffs, quite honestly. And I said from the onset of the season when I had this, again doing this on the Sports Talk Philly side, my guess was fourth.
Okay.
I don't feel that bad about that decision at this moment, just because I do think there's so many good teams in the Metro to begin with.
So tight.
I think Washington's going to end up winning the division just based on the way they've been playing. The Islanders, it's an interesting situation for them because of the fact that they had so much success early with the point streak that now maybe they've come back to earth a little bit, and it might cause some shuffling in the division. The two mystery ones to me are Pittsburgh and Carolina, because I think they could get hot at any point in time and make a run, and I think they could get cold at any time and be close to missing the playoffs. The key is consistency. If the Flyers can remain close to the same consistency they've been, and that's not really putting together a lot of losing streaks. I think they've had a couple of 4s and the 1-3 over the course of the road trip, which was the week from hell, as they put it. So, take that for what it's worth. I think this team could end up in third place in the Metro at the end of the year. I think third is a safe bet, but I'll say in that third, fourth range. I don't think they'll be the last team in, but I don't think they'll be the first team outside of Washington to make the playoffs in the Metro.
All right, Mike Senior, what do you got?
Barring any unforeseen trade, I would say my prediction is third. I think they'll get to third. Could very well, as Kevin said, they could easily land in the fourth spot. The Metro, it just seems like every team wins that's ahead of us every night, every time they play. So it's a really good division. So I'll predict third because I think they will add something to this team.
Okay, I'm not sure how much they can add given the salary cap, but we'll see. Dom, what do you got? Okay.
But I do think from the Islanders and Carolina and even Pittsburgh, the teams that are ahead of us right now, they could fall apart and we could, hit a hot streak and the opposite could happen too. But I do think that they do finish third, and barring injuries and stuff like that, I like them finishing third if they could stay healthy and if they can make a trade. Maybe you never know. Maybe they could finish second, or I don't know.
Yeah, Dom, you did mention the wild card team in there, and that's Pittsburgh.
Well,
right.
and I will say this to add to mine as well. They've played the Islanders twice. They've lost both. One of them was in a shootout in a game they probably should have won. I've harped on that before on this show, but beside the point.
Yeah.
And they've won 2 games against Carolina this year. I want to see them play Pittsburgh again sooner rather than later. And I know it's coming. I know January is when there's 2 really short order on the schedule. But I really want to see them play Pittsburgh again because I don't think that first game against Pittsburgh was anywhere near a representation of what the team really is. And I think they were just licking their wounds from a bad game against the Islanders to begin with and fell apart pretty quickly in that one as well. It is what it is, but I want to see, now that this team has been on a bit of a roll through November and into December, I'd love to see this team play Pittsburgh and actually see what they're made of against Pittsburgh, because that's where the difference really comes from. It comes from the games within the division, and I'd love to see them play Pittsburgh and really see where they measure up against Pittsburgh.
Yeah, and those January games you were talking about, the Flyers play the Pittsburgh Penguins on January 21st and 31st, which is the last game before the bye week and the first game out of the bye week after the All-Star game. So you talk about 2 games in quick succession kind of bringing back that rivalry. That's definitely one way to do it. And as we move forward, my answer, by the way, is kind of somewhere between everybody else's here. I could easily see the Flyers continuing to play well and the other teams fall apart a little bit, and the Flyers end up second and hosting a first-round playoff series.
I knew you were going second. I knew it.
But I think realistically they'll probably finish third and in that third divisional spot. The problem also that we talked a little bit about on last week's show, if you're fourth, if you're in the wild card, you're playing Washington or you're playing Boston.
Yep.
And that's really, really tough. I think you're going to see a hard fight for third in the Metro, not just the Flyers, but among everybody, because nobody wants to go into Washington, nobody wants to go into Boston, not come playoff
See,
time.
I don't see it that way necessarily. I'm not saying it's not a tough series, but I don't think any team that goes into Washington is necessarily screwed. I think
Really?
I'll say it this way. I look back to when the Flyers played Washington in the playoffs years ago, and everybody thought Washington was the far and away the best team in the conference at that point in time. And the Flyers.
You're talking about the series 3 or 4 years ago, the one where Michael Neuwirth played absolutely incredible hockey.
But that's sometimes the difference maker. If you have better goaltending on the other side, even if the rosters don't on paper make it seem like you're going to be at a disadvantage, you can make a series of it. I'm not saying they're going to win that series, but I'm saying you could make that more of an interesting series than thinking you're screwed and it's a sweep coming.
Well, listen, we're done because the Washington Capitals have Radko Gudas, and there's no way we're beating Radko Gudas.
He scored on Saturday too.
I know he did, his first of the season. Radko Gudas scored his first as a
eventually
Capital
you take
Saturday
enough shots,
night.
one of them goes in. So.
Yep. Was it from the red line? Because I feel like all his goals here were kind of that fake dump-in play. Either way, we're going to get into some NHL awards here real quick. I think we've kind of moved on from the Flyers. We'll come back around and touch on them maybe at the end. But today, we are recording this on December 22nd, 11 a.m. Sunday. The question is, what's your Stanley Cup final matchup today? Now, I'll give you guys a second to think about it. I'm sure Kevin probably has his. But right now, I think Colorado is absolutely 100% the team out west. They are maybe the best team in hockey. Arizona has also been really good. And by the way, we buried the lead here. Taylor Hall is an Arizona Coyote now. We haven't talked about that on the show. But I think it's Colorado out west, and I'm going to go Boston in the east. I think your final is Colorado-Boston.
I actually have something similar. I have Colorado and Washington. I love Colorado. I agree 100%.
Colorado's a fun team to watch, man. Turns out Nathan McKinnon is really good at hockey, and he's playing with really good people, and people say goaltending matters, but not to Colorado, apparently.
Well, I hope we do get a St. Louis, Colorado West final. I think that would be insane. I think that would be a great series. I think St. Louis is a better quote unquote team as far as just a completeness sake. Not that they have more talent.
Okay.
And they have the one thing that Colorado doesn't have. They have
Experience?
Bennington. They have Bennington.
Oh, Bennington? Okay.
Yep. So for that reason, I'm going St. Louis, and I think Washington and Boston will play a for the ages epic Game 7 overtime war for the ages, with Washington squeaking by, and then Washington beating St. Louis for the Stanley Cup.
So you have all the favorites making the Final Four. I'm glad you root for the Cinderella story.
I have the best team in hockey winning the Stanley Cup.
I'm glad you really root for the Cinderella stories. No.
I'm not
Boston's
rooting.
beating the Flyers in the Eastern Conference Finals in my bracket. Don't get it wrong. There's definitely some underdog story going on there.
Good.
But all right, Kevin, what do you got?
Well,
Let's hear
all right.
it.
Well, here's the
Let's
thing.
hear it.
You said, oh, I'm sure you said you thought I had an answer ready. My prediction from the beginning of the year when I did this is not even close right now. So
what was your preseason answer? Now I want to hear it.
My preseason answer was Tampa Bay against Vegas.
Oh, okay.
Because I
think Vegas can still figure it out. Honestly,
Yeah, no, I like Vegas.
I like
Tampa.
Vegas, but I like teams in the West currently better than that. I agree with Mike Senior. I think that I'd love to see a St. Louis Colorado conference final. I'd love to see that. I agree. And I would say I think Colorado could win that series if it came down to it.
Oh, they definitely could.
I think Colorado would end up, especially with Colorado getting healthy. I think that they would end up winning that series. Especially if they're still healthy come playoff time. So that would be, I think right now that would be my guess out of the West, just because I really like the makeup of their team. That's
also more likely to be a second round matchup. That's not going to be a conference finals matchup. That's going to be a second round matchup because they're in the same division.
That's right. That the current structure prevents that from being a conference final potentially.
Right. So
So it's again. Let's talk about how bad the playoff structure is that you get matchups like that in the second round. Because I was thinking about it too. I was thinking about that earlier because I think there's a way that you're going to get either the great Washington Pittsburgh matchup or something like, or Washington Carolina a year ago was a pretty good series too, if I remember correctly, or something like that.
That was a great round.
So you go.
That was great.
But you're going to get those within the first two rounds. That could conceivably be the best two teams in the conference. Based on everything, and you're going to get them by the time round 2 rolls around. It should be a conference final. Gone are the days where you still
have Boston in the other division.
I actually, if I'm being honest here too, I think Boston's the team that probably comes out of the East. That's my guess.
They were angry after not winning the cup last year.
Well,
they
not
came close.
only that, but here's my not my problem because I don't want to say it like that. But here's my theory with Boston at this point. That team kind of at the moment has gone through a little bit of a lull. They lost a few more games than they have earlier in the year.
A little bit down.
But what's the reason? The reason is that when Pasternak stopped scoring and Bergeron wasn't driving the play also, and that top line quiets down.
He was missing a lot of games, Bergeron was, yeah.
But the team quiets down. And then I just see that team come playoff time finding that groove, getting rolling, and when they find that groove and get rolling, that team is very hard to stop when that top line is completely on like that. How to turn it on. That's where I see it. That's where I see it coming down to. Like I get worried about seeing that team. I would get worried about seeing that team because that line could be rolling during the playoffs, and that would make me think that they're, that's the guess. I mean, I could easily see Washington come out of it.
They are top heavy, Kevin. They are top heavy.
Oh, they are, and I've noted.
So is Colorado.
I've noted. Colorado, I think, has more depth. Because I like a lot of guys for Colorado that aren't on that top line. If you take away
Colorado also doesn't have goaltending.
Well, if you take away Rantanen and McKinnon and Landeskog, and granted all three are huge losses for that team.
Yeah.
Burakovsky stepped up big time. There's other guys, Comfer, Calvert.
Kadri's having a great season.
Like, they've got so many other good forwards that it's hard to compete with. That's what it comes down to for me. That's why I like Colorado so much. I remember for years thinking that Mikko Rantanen was one of the best kept secrets in the NHL, and he's not anymore, obviously. But from his rookie year, I liked him. I always liked him, and quite honestly, if the Flyers didn't draft Ivan Provorov in that year, I would have gone after Rantanen next.
Okay.
Because I liked him that much at that time. I thought Rantanen was one of the best forwards out of that draft, no question. And
that's proven to be the case.
Yeah,
absolutely.
I from the very beginning, because I think back in those years I was doing draft profiles like on prospects they could take or whatever. Rantanen was one of the first ones I did, and so was Provorov. But Rantanen was one of the first ones I did because his name just jumped off the board.
But yeah, either way, there's definitely going to be some really good second round matchups. We talked a little bit about that Colorado-St. Louis matchup, that Washington-Pittsburgh matchup that we're probably going to get in the second round. And that's one of the reasons that I love the playoffs, because at that point, you're going to have those teams going to absolute war in the second round. And then if they make it through, Colorado or St. Louis might have to play Arizona, who is another really, really good team at this point. And then in the East, Washington or Pittsburgh, whoever survives that war probably has Boston waiting for them. And it's absolutely unreal. But let's talk about Arizona.
What I gotta say before we get off of your original prediction, Kevin, don't kill Tampa just yet.
Oh, I'm not gonna.
They're still gonna have something. They still might have something to say about this.
I'm not gonna. I'm not gonna take them. I'm not gonna take them out of the picture by any stretch.
Right. Yeah.
I think
same with Vegas. Honestly,
the thing about picking Tampa for the Eastern Conference champion position, though, is where I pull away from it, because I think eventually when they run into Boston, they're not going to be able to keep up at that point. I think it was going to be if they can come back to make the playoffs, which I still see as a very legitimate possibility. They'll end up getting to the playoffs in a spot where I would assume they'd be third in that division. So they'd play a road series. I could see them possibly having to give a lot to win that road series
against a Toronto,
against either a Toronto or a Montreal, but I'd still see them winning it. Probably no matter who they play, whether it's Montreal, Toronto, Buffalo, whoever. I think it's going to be somebody that can get defeated by Tampa. But then
Toronto fans are going to be jumping off the cliff if they lose in the first round again.
Well, it's the way the structure of the playoff picture works. You're automatically, realistically, it's always been the way it's been viewed is that Atlantic division has typically three really good teams. It's Toronto, Boston, and Tampa.
Last year, all three were in the top
first round.
Five.
And someone's playing somebody in the first round. This year, it's going to be the way the Metro is viewed, because you're going to have Washington at the top, probably. You're going to have the Islanders, Penguins, Hurricanes, and Flyers all battling it out for those top three spots, and someone's going to play somebody who you feel like shouldn't be going home in the first round. And it's just
and there's a really good chance one of those teams just misses the playoffs.
Yeah, there is.
I think 5 teams are going to go from the Metro.
I agree with that.
I think you're right, but there's a chance that Buffalo bounces back, or whoever it is, and one of those teams steals a wild card. But I agree that I don't think it's likely, and I think it's 5 Metro teams this year. But either way, that conversation just made me think about how much I love the playoffs. We're sitting here in December talking about Colorado, St. Louis, and we're all just salivating over that matchup.
It's my favorite sports sentence.
Yep.
There's nothing like playoff hockey.
Playoff hockey. Yep. And also, there's no 3-on-3 overtime in playoff hockey, so I know you love it.
Yep. Shop till you drop.
Yep. All right. We're gonna do some individual awards from around the league, and we're gonna start with the Hart Trophy. Now, I personally have strong feelings about the Hart Trophy because I'm a firm believer. I'm a firm believer in most valuable having some meaning, and most valuable being different than most outstanding. But before we get into our NHL awards here, we're actually going to say goodbye to Mike Sr. He's got to go.
Holiday things call.
Yep. So before we let him go, you can find him on Twitter at Mike from S Jersey. And just a reminder that you can find the show at YWT Podcast, as well as Facebook, Instagram, Podbean, iTunes, Google Podcasts, Sports Talk Philly, Spotify, all that stuff. Mike, Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays, and I won't see you next week because we have next week off. I'll see you in 2020, and you have a good holiday, sir.
2020. You have a wonderful Christmas, Kevin, Dom as well. Everyone out there have a wonderful Christmas, a safe Christmas. Hope Santa treats everyone great, and it's always a pleasure to be here every day. And can't wait to come back in 2020 and do this again.
There you go.
Absolutely.
You'll have 10,000 followers by then. All right,
Same to you,
we'll
Mike.
see you,
Same
Mike.
to you.
See you guys.
See ya.
Have a
See
good
ya.
one.
And Mike is gone, and we roll along. We're going to get back into the show. Okay, Kevin and Dom. This is an interesting dynamic that I haven't had before. All right, let's get into some NHL awards.
Sure.
Back to the Hart Trophy. I feel strongly about the most valuable player being the actual most valuable player on their team. For example, you look at the Edmonton Oilers, and Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl are two of the best players in the league. As far as I'm concerned, neither of them should be in the running for the Hart because neither of them is the most valuable. They are both the most valuable. And if you're both valuable, then neither of you is super valuable. But that's my opinion. They might be an exception, to be fair, because that team is so atrocious. Anyway, Kevin, who's your current leader in the clubhouse for the Hart Trophy?
Well, here's what I'll say about the collective Hart Trophy deal here. If I had to pick 3 finalists today, I would probably pick McDavid, McKinnon, and Eichel.
Okay.
And my preseason prediction was McDavid, and I didn't expect Draisaitl to be as high on the points list as he is. I will say McDavid has a lot of value to the team in more ways than just, okay, yes, I know Draisaitl's a good player. Edmonton fell drastically or lost a lot of production, didn't win as many games when they break up the line that keeps Draisaitl with McDavid. So kind of shows you how good McDavid is, that he kind of drives what Draisaitl's able to do. And Draisaitl has to work so much harder to be that player when he's on a line by himself as opposed to playing with McDavid. So I see the merit for doing it, but if you ask me who I would give it to today, I'd probably give it to McKinnon.
Okay. I think that's entirely fair. Dom, what do you think? Right. Because
theory, but
Yeah.
I do believe it will be between McDavid and McKinnon. I think for more of the underdog, I'd like to see McKinnon. Not that he's an underdog, but compared to McDavid, winning the trophy,
right.
I'll give it to McKinnon.
Okay. I'm actually going to go a different direction. I'm going to go with David Pastrnak. Because
You
we're
could also
sitting
go
here.
Marchand too.
Yeah, okay. There's a difference between you have other good players and you're the most valuable. I think Pastrnak is so intensely valuable because it's December 22nd. They've played something in the neighborhood of 35, 36 games. He has 28 goals. That is unreal.
True. Yeah, I mean, and they're both the same. Him and Marchand are both at the same, around the same mark in points, I believe, too. Marchand might have like 1 or 2 more points.
Right. Yeah, they have the same number. They both have 51 points. But Pastrnak scoring 28 goals, I think, just launches him into Hart Trophy conversation in my book because 30 goals by Christmas is unreal.
Yeah, I could see,
and the fact that
I could see that getting into the conversation. I feel like that goes right back to what your theory was about playing with other good players too. I think that that line collectively is. I mean, not to try to keep retracing everything, but to go back to McKinnon's case. McKinnon plays on a really good line when they're healthy with Rantanen and Landeskog. Rantanen and Landeskog only have 20 games played this year, so for the other 16 games Colorado has played, you could easily miss a beat by trying to fill those gaps, and instead they haven't missed a beat at all. And McKinnon's a driver
been
of it.
Great.
So that's kind of a standout to me. I mean, I was going to even say that out of the 3 names I gave, I'd like to see the runner-up of that group be Eichel. Out of the 3 I gave, because you take him out for 1 game and you see how big of a loss that is. So that's to the point of the value that he has to his team. Whereas I think that look, I don't think that Edmonton's winning a game if McDavid doesn't suit up, but at the same time,
they're an AHL team without him.
Well, it's in a lot of ways. It's such a loss, and they do have modest depth. They've got guys who can score below the first line.
And they're starting to put together a little bit of a decent defense.
But and the only other, I mean, look, the only other thing I'll give for McDavid is the fact that when you've got guys, Tyson Barrie recently pulled himself, not from a game, but like he was dealing with an injury, his ankle wasn't feeling perfect, and he was going to come out and try to test it at the start of the second period, and he did, and he probably could have played in normal circumstances, but he flat out even said, I saw McDavid on the other side, and I'm like, they don't want me out here, not at 100%.
No.
It's going to hurt us, so I'm out. So that's, like, that tells you what McDavid does to other players, in the sense that if they don't feel like they can keep up with him, he's that elite, it's that simple. So that's why those three stand out. I think Pastrnak is a good answer, though, because Pastrnak has been so next level for that group. I mean, Marchand's been really good too.
Absurd.
But Pastrnak is the finisher of that group. That's the thing. He's the finisher of that trio, and that's why I like that answer too. So they're all valid answers. It's just a matter of, I think what bothers people about McDavid being there is the fact that McDavid is the captain of an Edmonton Oilers team and the leading scorer of an Edmonton Oilers team that doesn't experience the overall team success.
Right.
Not in the same way that when Gretzky was winning it every single year, pretty much that he was with Edmonton, that the team was a juggernaut because he was the most valuable player on a team of all-stars and Hall of Famers.
But you also had Yari Curry and Paul Coffey
and
there.
Mark Messier and the list goes on. It's but beside the point, like, it's not that guy. Like, he's not that guy that transforms the team success necessarily. And I think that's what
he's just very good.
And I think that's what bothers people. Edmonton's still been a really good team this year and still in playoff position, but they've gone from being, at one point in time, they were a top 5 team in the league. Now they're back in that middle of the pack kind of deal. I mean, they're close in the Pacific Division because I think, for as good as we talked about the Metro being, the Pacific has kind of left a lot to be desired, and same thing with the Atlantic. But, that is what it is, and you can't control what the other teams in the division do. You can only control yourself. And if you're that good of a player and you can lift your team to be the most successful in your division and to a complete turnaround, I think that makes a huge difference. But I don't think it's as complete of a turnaround as people want to admit.
Right.
And I the interesting thing about Eichel, and I know we're talking about most valuable, we're not talking about points yet, point leaders, but if you look at the top 7 point leaders, and Eichel is second in the league in goals, you have McDavid, Draisaitl, McKinnon, Marchand, Pastrnak. Eichel is tied for 5th, and then you have John Carlson. Now, all of those guys, 2 of them play for Edmonton, 1 plays for Colorado, 2 play for Boston, all great teams. Well, yeah. I mean, granted, Edmonton's in the middle of the pack, but you know what I mean. And then
they play together.
Carlson, Washington.
Plays with Ovi and Backstrom.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, I really didn't realize how good of a year Eichel really is having. I mean, that's
been
interesting
stellar.
about it. I just thought that was a little interesting.
And we talked about it a little bit when the Flyers played them. Losing Eichel right before that game was a huge deal. Now, what do you guys think about the concept of Darcy Kemper being a Hart finalist? Because I think he should absolutely be in the running. And to me, it's a shame that goalies don't usually get in that conversation anymore.
I don't see it. I mean, it's just, I don't feel like he's been enough of a story nationally for it to hold any legs. That's the problem. I mean,
yeah, I think that's the Arizona effect, though. I think that's the Arizona effect, though. I think he should have been.
It is a little bit, but at the same time, I also feel like it's just, his numbers are good, but it's just, I guess maybe because it's on a consistent level. I don't know, I don't know that he's necessarily the true number 1 out there. They do still use Ranta in some games. If he was going to play 65, 70 games, put up those numbers, carry Arizona to a playoff spot, then I think you'd have something there. So maybe, and granted, I think he's just been recently placed on injured reserve, so like he's out for a little while,
right.
which is going to hurt the case even more. If that were to continue for the second half of the year, you might have a case here for it. I just don't see it in the first half. Granted, because I see where you're coming from, because Arizona does not have a single guy who you could point out from a forward or defenseman standpoint.
No.
You go, that's the guy who's driving the play, and that's the guy who makes the difference.
So far this season, Clayton Keller's scoring has been down. Phil Kessel's scoring has been down. They just got Taylor Hall.
Right. They're a defensive team, and goaltending is obviously the biggest part of that. So I think, I see where you're coming from with it. I just don't know that there's enough of a national recognition on it. I don't think there's enough people. Let's put it this way. I don't think there's enough people out there who nationally are even willing to recognize that Arizona is very close. If actually they're tied for it, so they're
a good team.
They're a top 10 team in the league, and nobody pays attention to it.
No, and I really legitimately think they're going to be a problem come playoffs. I mentioned it a little bit earlier when we were talking about predictions, but I think they're going to make some serious noise in the playoffs. If Kemper or Ranta or whatever you want to call it isn't in the Hart nomination, do you see them being in the Vezina nomination? Because that's our next category.
I could see it.
Who do you think wins the Vezina? I think Darcy Kemper has himself in the conversation, assuming he doesn't miss too much time. Ben Bishop is having another good season in Dallas. But, Tuukka Rask is having a great season. Braden Holtby's having a great season. There's still a lot of really good, high-quality goaltenders. But I wouldn't say that anybody has emerged as a Vezina finalist at this point halfway through the season. I'd have a hard time predicting the finals.
Yeah, Kemper's definitely up there. I think Bishop's a good guess there, too. Bishop, I believe, I have to go back and check my list on. Yeah, Bishop was my guess in preseason.
I think that's pretty safe. Yeah.
Yeah, and granted, I wasn't. It's not that I don't know that Arizona plays that style. It's just more or less I associated Arizona with a tandem because they really played tandem last year. I find it
and
hard.
It's hard to give Arizona credit for being good. Well, it's hard to do that because they've never been good.
Well, and here's the thing about picking a goalie for the Vezina too. I mean, Bishop really does at least get the bulk of the starts for Dallas. You can safely say that. I don't know, Tuukka Rask is having a great year, but is he going to get enough starts that you feel like he's earned it, like that in that sense? Because they do use Halak on a regular basis. I look, there's nothing wrong with any of the numbers for either goalie for the Islanders, but again, they're in such a constant rotation, it's hard to single one of them out, so I don't know that any of them come through. The next name that I see on the list that I go, that's a regular starter, and that's a guy who's putting up good numbers, is probably Jordan Binnington. That's the next guy I can think of being a finalist. I'd probably lean a little towards Bishop just for the, overall recognition, I'll say, just because, unfortunately the Arizona effect is what it is, but Kemper's a deserving finalist for it by far. And depending on how that team performs, without him until he comes back, because that's going to determine a lot too. And then once he comes back, if he continues the same thing, then I could see it probably being a good case to maybe even win it.
Carter Hart.
No, as much as I'd love to say that, and don't get me wrong, I think Carter Hart's gonna, I think he's just gonna.
I think he'll be there one day,
but I think he's just gonna keep getting better as the year goes on too. So I do think that as the year goes on, the numbers will start to come up to the league leading standards. It's not gonna get him a Vezina finalist nomination just yet, I don't think, but.
It might get the conversation rolling because we've seen a lot of times these awards, these national awards are about narratives, and you kind of have to build some steam for a couple of years. Like Sean Couturier's name was in the Selke conversation for 2 or 3 years before he was finally a nominee. Shane Gostisbehere was vaguely around Norris conversation for a couple of years before he was a nominee. You know what I mean? Like you kind of have to let these stories build for a year or two. So even if Carter Hart doesn't end up, in the top 3 in Vegas for the awards, maybe he gets himself into the top 10, he gets a couple of top 3 votes and kind of gets himself in the conversation so that next year, assuming he does it again, now he's real, now he's legitimate, now he's a contender.
Right. Well, and I've talked about this on the show before where it's, and sometimes on my appearances on 97.3 as well, where I do feel like they shelter him a little bit still. And because they do, they put him in the best situations to succeed. So that does help.
Which I'm okay with, for the record.
Sure, but it helps numbers. When he comes into his own completely, and I'm not saying he isn't coming into his own. He's definitely on his way to being a potential superstar. It's just the way it is. But something's a little different
when you're starting 60 or 65 games in a season.
Right, and right now, I'd love to see him get into 50. We don't really have. Let's be real. We don't really have a point of reference with this because he came up halfway through the year last season. So
as you can't 19 turning 20-year-old.
So you can't put a number of starts or games played on it and go, well, that means he's going to play blank this year. You can't do that. You need to see a full year to understand what they're starting him at and then what they're going to try to grow him into.
Yep.
So,
and they're probably being a little conservative with his number.
Sure.
Because there's no reason.
And I still see him getting into 50 games this year, maybe more, quite honestly. I mean, I kind of surprised myself. I didn't realize what number start it was, but I put out there, a year ago we saw his first start, and now he's up to 55 career games. Didn't realize it was already 55 in a matter of a calendar year. But that's substantial because that kind of gives you a decent perspective on how many out of 82 he possibly could play in. And I think that's probably a good number to see him get into this entire year. It would probably be 55. And that's saying games played, not necessarily starts. I could see like 5 games played extra on top of 50 starts, and that gets you to the 55 mark or something like that.
Right. He's sitting at 24 right now at Christmas, halfway through the season.
Right, and I could see him, especially with more than 41 games still to go on the schedule. I could see
him taking the lion's share down the stretch.
So far, and I assume it's going to be this way when the Flyers play Monday as well. My thought process for the way they were going to handle goaltending for the week was dead on. I thought Carter Hart was getting the 2 starts at home because he's been really good at home. Elliott was going to get the start on the road in Ottawa, and then they were going to come back to Carter Hart again on Monday against the Rangers, and that's how they were going to go into the break. And then when you come out of the break, let's put it this way, you're going to come out of the break and immediately have a back-to-back. So he's getting one of those road games. I would probably guess Anaheim. Just because he's already faced them. I think they'll give Elliott the start against San Jose, possibly. It could be reversed. It could be either or. I
think you might see Hart against San Jose so that you can then play him Tuesday against LA.
Maybe, but, who knows? I mean, I think they might also go into rotation.
Just give him the extra day
They
off.
might go into rotation with that, too, and if they give him the Sunday against Anaheim to play against a team he's already faced, then you also have him ready to go for Vegas, which is a pretty big deal also. I mean, that's getting a little far ahead of ourselves, though, too.
Right, well, I'm looking even further, to be honest with you.
Oh, you're going all the way to the Washington game at home again.
Well, you got Carolina on the road and then a back-to-back game with Washington at home the next night. I'm going to be really, really interested to see who plays which game there.
I have a theory already on it. I have a feeling, it's because...
Well, you know what? Then why don't we hold that? Maybe I'll have you on the first show of the new year, and we'll talk about that. You and I can talk about that off the air, but why don't you hold that and we'll talk about it later.
That works.
Either way, Flyers have the Rangers tomorrow before Christmas, as we talked about earlier. We just got really sidetracked there.
We did.
Dom, do you have any Vezina? Do you have any Vezina nominees? It seems like they're doing a lot of that. They play Halak a lot.
Yeah. It kind of, frustrates me fantasy-wise, but other than that, I like Binnington and I like Bishop a lot.
Okay. I think they're solid choices, and, it really is early enough in the season. And for me, I feel like the Vezina, maybe more than any other award, is kind of a recency thing. If a goalie has 20 insane games down the stretch, they can win the Vezina, even if the rest of their season was kind of all right. Like Andrei Vasilevsky could still very easily win the Vezina and just have an amazing second half. Like, that's possible. That's in his wheelhouse.
Another guy I wouldn't leave off the radar too far is Marc-Andre Fleury, too. I think that he's another guy who's got good numbers so far, missed a little bit of time, and if he can keep that going, especially if Vegas can pull away in that division, which is very winnable for a bunch of teams, that could be the difference maker for him too.
Yep. Next up, we got the Jack Adams. That is the award for best coach in the National Hockey League. Now, I teased it a little earlier. I think Alain Vigneault is a finalist for this. I'm not necessarily sure he wins it, but if this Flyers team finishes, especially if they finish second in the division, maybe even if they finish third in the division, I think Alain Vigneault has himself a nice little case for Jack Adams.
This is so tough because there's a lot of usually there's 2 ways to measure this award, and it's either teams that make massive improvements from a year ago or teams that continue to build upon what they've done or can make a big change. And that's why, every time this award conversation comes up, Barry Trotz pops into my mind immediately because he's been so good consistently with the teams he's had. And I think a big deal about that is the fact that a year ago, the Islanders make a lot of noise, and that's why he's up in the running for it then. But they lose one of their biggest goalies from a year ago. When Robin Lehner goes off to Chicago, they bring in Varlamov, and Varlamov is having a good year too. So you can't deny that it seems like when new goaltenders go to play for the Islanders under Barry Trotz, they're going to put up good numbers because the system is what it is, and he's so good at it. Outside of that, there's a few other names I'm thinking of that fall along the lines of the improvement / staying consistent deal.
There is also one little thing I want to point out here, and it's that this conversation this year is different than any other year because I don't remember any other year with this much coaching turnover, and it gives you a lot of potential for, like, if Toronto wins 30 of their next 40 games and like ends up competing for the Atlantic, Sheldon Keefe has to be there, right? And
Possibly,
you can say the same thing in Dallas and like all over the place with all this coaching turnover. So that does throw an additional wrinkle into the Jack Adams conversation.
Sure. I mean, Dallas is one of the exceptions I'll make on that because Dallas's circumstances were very different, not just in terms of the way the coaching change happened, but they were already a decent team as it was before that happened.
Right.
And it was different. It wasn't like a coach was fired for poor performance.
Easy for you to say.
Yeah, easy for me to say. We've been talking for a while. It's all good.
Yeah.
It's not a poor performance thing. And then, hey, by the way, here comes this new... Like, that's Toronto's case. And I think Toronto...
Right.
And realistically, I think Toronto would have to blow a bunch of teams out of the water here to really make Sheldon Keefe be a finalist. Because there's teams that are going to have done it for the whole year with whatever coach they have. So
I agree.
So the names... Like, here's the names I'm coming... First of all, a name...
But it's definitely a wrinkle.
Yeah, first of all,
sure.
a name that's not a new coach by any stretch, but a guy who I think deserves some recognition is Rod Brindamore. I think he's done a tremendous job. I think he needs to be on the radar here for sure.
Flyers legend Rod Brindamore, absolutely.
I would definitely, again, another guy who's not necessarily a new coach to the situation, but the results are starting to come. Rick Tocchet, another former Flyer for Arizona, and making things happen.
Yep.
Dave Tippett with Edmonton
Craig
is another
doing
one.
Great, by the way.
Craig Berube's doing great too. I mean, it's really tough to say. See, here's the thing that's going to hurt Craig Berube in this is that when you're coming off a Stanley Cup year, I think people expect you to be pretty decent. So because of that, I don't think there's as much of a shock factor. I don't think it feels like
it's hard to be spectacular.
The year he would have had the best shot to win was last year because of the fact that there was the turnaround. He took over, they go to the top, and unfortunately for Craig Berube, voting on stuff like this is done before the playoffs. So because it's done before the playoffs, you took the entire playoff run out of the picture, which included... I believe they went to 2-7, not including the Stanley Cup final, 2 other 7-game series or 2 6s and 1-7 to get to the final, and then the final was a 7. Like it was a war. You had more than just a war. That's a marathon to get to the final, and we know it is anyway. But that takes it to a whole new level when you play almost your maximum number of games to make it there. Those are all names that pop out. I do want to, let's put it this way. My preseason prediction, which is not looking near as good anymore, was Joel Quenneville.
Oof.
I also thought, let me be fair about that too. I also did not think that Sergei Bobrovsky would not be in our Vezina discussion, and I did not think that, given the other forwards that they had, I mean, Barkov's not even leading the team in points. That's how good some of their forwards are. Defensively, they're just not as good of a team as I think people expected. I think, that's been a step backwards, and I don't know if that's Quenneville's style or whatever it is, but something's not working there that you would think.
He'll figure it out. He'll get his guys in there.
Here's the thing. They are hovering around playoff position, but realistically, what about that sentence is different from last year? They were hovering around playoff position last year, too. So it's not like he's been a game changer. I do want to throw Alain Vigneault into the discussion. I do think he's worthy of it. That being said, there's a lot of other people out there. Before I even got to Alain Vigneault, I reeled off 4 or 5 other names right off the bat. And again, among the successful teams too, like I mentioned how Barry Trotz is always a guy who comes up in those discussions. I guess you have to assume that Jared Bednar is going to be in there for Colorado because they've been so good. You have to assume that Todd Reardon's going to be in it for Washington because of how good they've been. Like, you have to assume those guys are going to be up there as well just because of the team's overall success, even though they've been there and done that before. But I would like to see it go to anybody on the list that I gave of teams that have improved drastically from one year to the next, where I think coaching really has mattered. So somebody along the lines of, and again, I think Vigneault's kind of far down on this list, even unfortunately, just because I don't feel like it's as drastic of an improvement as people may think. I think people always knew they had a talent player-wise, and maybe tapping into it, maybe people are going to look at goaltending and say that was the secret. They needed a goalie, and now look what they're doing. And maybe they don't give AV enough credit for what he's been able to do. I think a lot of people are going to give Rick Tocchet a lot of credit, and people are going to give Dave Tippett a lot of credit for turning those teams around to be playoff contenders. And again, I hope Rod Brindamore sort of gets his due as well, because this is 2 years running that this team has been pretty good, and I hope he gets his due.
Yeah, and it is a little bit of a cop-out, but there is still so much hockey to play that this can all go up in the air.
Well, for sure, with one of those teams that I mentioned that so far we've seen the improvement. If it fades in the second half, it's not going to be a discussion, and that's the point. Yeah.
Dom, what do you think? Jack Norris.
So Kevin brought up a name,
or not Jack Norris, Jack Adams.
Yeah, I got you.
Norris
Bednar?
is next. Spoiler alert.
I do like Jared Bednar. I think, and like Kevin said, they go from one year to the next. You see a drastic difference. His first year was not very good, and these last 2 years or 3 years, I guess he's been there that long. 3 years, 4 years.
Yeah, he's been there a couple years. Yeah.
Yeah. So you see the drastic difference from his start to now, with such a young roster, and they are very talented. But such a young roster, and you brought it up earlier. They don't have great goaltending. To be where they're at, I think is very impressive. I like him. I do like Trotz. Obviously, Craig Berube. I think the two guys are probably Berube and Bednar. I think those are my two guys for right now. But like you guys said,
Okay.
it could all change. Just like any award, it can all change.
Perfectly reasonable. Yeah.
Yep.
Can we all agree at this point that the Norris is John Carlson's to lose?
I was going to try to keep it short and just say that.
Yeah. Art Ross is going to be either Draisaitl or McDavid. Like, it's pretty clear. The Norris is going to be John Carlson's because he had the most ridiculous start by a defenseman I've ever seen, and he's still like right around point per game. It's unreal. The last little category we have here is the Calder. Now, this one's interesting because, honestly, for me, a lot of the rookies haven't really started to cement their case yet. You have some guys out there who are kind of floating around. You have some contenders, but no one's really reached out and grabbed it yet, in my mind. Kevin, what do you think?
I think this is an easy one, actually. I'll start by saying this. My preseason prediction was Capo Caco. And
okay.
I'll admit the reason I picked him from the start was because I thought that he was more NHL ready than Jack Hughes was. That was not taking anything away from Hughes. I just thought that he was more NHL ready. It was going to lead to more instant success. I'll call it that.
I'm sorry. This is easy. You're right. Somebody has reached out and taken it, and I know what you're about to say, but I'll let you say it.
So that was my guess originally. And again, here's where I would agree with you. I think that there is no other rookie that has really reached out and taken it, aside from one in particular.
I forgot about that guy.
There's nobody else, though, in my mind who really has jumped out. It's not one of the Hughes, because both of the Hughes brothers are rookies this year. Neither of them have really been the guy I'm thinking of. Kako hasn't done it either. The easy choice here is Cale Makar. It's so easy. It's so easy at this point. He's far and away been such a tremendous player, and I know we saw shades of it when Colorado was in the playoffs last year, and he got a little taste of it. That was basically
he started his career in like game 4.
How do you like that? You start your NHL career playing in the Stanley Cup playoffs. It's got to be awesome. And
wild.
Realistically, I think the thing that's so telling about him is the fact that when Colorado makes the trade that they do with Toronto during the offseason, you trade Tyson Barrie, you basically announce right there off the spot that some young player is going to be your top defenseman, one way or another.
Yep.
Whether you thought it was going to be Sam Girard or whether it was going to be Cale Makar. Makar has jumped into that role, grabbed hold of it, is not letting go by any stretch. The only reason he's not doing anything right now is because he's been hurt, unfortunately. And that's
and he looks incredible.
And you know what? I mean, I don't put his injury right now as something that hurts his case the way it did years ago when McDavid was a rookie and you missed missed that much time. Well, I mean, look, the reason I'm saying that is it is telling that Makar has missed as much time as he has, because realistically at the time you knew there was a possibility he was going to miss that game that the Flyers played there, which was also the first game Connect, and he missed. Same kind of deal, or close to. I think Makar's is more of a shoulder than a concussion.
He's kind of been questionable for like 3 weeks.
But the fact that he's missed that much time says a lot. I mean, hopefully the break does him well, because outside of what I believe one more game that the Flyers play against Colorado at home in early February, I believe, that's pretty much the only other time I don't know that I would worry about seeing him.
I'm not supremely worried about Cale Makar unless we make the finals.
Right. So, like, in other words, I'm not, like, I just enjoy watching. I just enjoy watching him play.
I'm willing to root for him.
Like, I just enjoy watching him play. He's a really, and you know what? There's a part of me that, and this is from going down to the games I go to, I'm looking forward to seeing the Rangers to finally see Kako in person. Just want to get a look at him. I've seen Jack.
We've seen Hughes in person.
I've seen Hughes in person, and it's he is a talented player. I mean, let's put it this way: Jack Hughes gets the whole deal started with that save that Carter Hart made on Taylor Hall. He's the one who's got the vision, so you got to give the kid credit for that. And but yeah, selfishly, there's always guys I hope to see. I remember the first time I went to go see a McDavid game, and you're going, I'm excited to see this guy today, and I'm excited to see Austin Matthews, and I'm excited to see Jack Eichel, and I'm excited to see, you do feel like you're robbed a little bit of something when those guys don't play. I would be thrilled to see Cale Makar play when Colorado's here in February. I absolutely would be thrilled to see it, and I want to see, because I've heard so much about how good of a skater he is, and I want to see it. I felt that about Heiskanen for Dallas. I think Heiskanen is one of the best young skaters there is in the game right now for a defenseman.
He's really good,
and
yeah.
I want to see it from Makar as well. So Makar's the easy choice, though, no question about it. I think he's grabbed hold of it, and quite honestly, the fact that he's standing still right now because of the injury doesn't mean a thing.
He's still fine.
I think he's fine.
Dom, anybody on the radar other than Cale Makar? Because that is kind of the easy answer.
Right. I do like the kid from Buffalo too.
Olsen, yeah.
Yes, yeah. I might. I could be wrong.
Is he
might
considered a rookie?
Yes, he is.
Oh, he is. Okay.
I believe, I could be wrong, but I think he leads all rookies in goals. He might be second, honestly, but
no, I think he does lead rookies in goals.
Yeah. Yeah.
What does he have? 15.
He has 15. No, 16 now because he scored on Saturday too.
Right.
No,
I do like
it was
him
funny.
a lot.
Yeah, it was funny because I actually had not tweeting at me, but I saw tweets during the Buffalo game when Olofsson scored on the deflection against the Flyers. That were like, nobody cares that you're padding your Calder stats. Like this game was still lost.
Going back to fantasy hockey, I'll take the garbage goal.
Hey,
sure.
Yeah, I know you will.
I could use a few.
Well, that just about wraps up our holiday spectacular here. We have kind of wrapped up all our categories. I think my voice is tired. I think Kevin and Dom are both kind of tired too. This show is on the very long side, and we're actually going to have Mike edit some things together. I'm going to try to record it with some other people later. We got some holiday surprises for you. But I believe that is just about to do it for this holiday spectacular. One more thing, I'm gonna spring one on you guys. What do you want for Christmas from the Flyers? Dom, we'll have you go first because Kevin already has all his media passes. He's gotten his best Christmas gift. But if the Flyers were getting you a gift for Christmas, I'll keep it nice and easy.
Go ahead.
I want you to go above 500 on the West Coast road swing. That's all I want. Just get as many points as you have games, and we're fine.
Yeah, I think. Oh boy, you really did spring on me.
I know. Five games on the Western Conference road trip. I would like to see them win 3 of them. I would like to see them go, 3-1-1 or better.
I'll go a little less broad, I'd like to see them get hot. I'd like to see them get hot from here on out. Obviously that was a good week, but I'd like to see them continue it.
You don't want to be sweating about the playoffs in the first week of April where they're clawing for every single point. I got you. All right, Kevin, what do you got in there?
Okay, let's see. Did you say one thing or a list? Because I could do a small list.
You could do a small list. That's fine.
Because one of them's a simple thing. One of them would be at some point down the road here, and even beyond the regular season, no matter what happens in playoffs or if they make the playoffs or whatever, somewhere down the road here, fairly early, hopefully a positive update on Oscar Lindblom that shows that there's progress. Not for the sake of his season. I understand that the season is over for him with the treatment.
Just for the sake of his health.
But for the sake of his health and the sake of the possibility of a return down the road, because to hear a positive update on him at some point down the road would be a great gift for everybody. We're all pulling so hard for him here, and we want to hear a good update. One of my on ice wish list or gift would be to actually see Nolan Patrick play this year. I think that would be a great gift for everybody to see him get into the lineup and actually to see I think the term I've used with you, Kyle, on shows we've recorded in the past was optimal lineup, to have the full optimal lineup that was intended from the start. And unfortunately, with Lindblom's diagnosis, that's not going to be possible for the rest of this year completely. But part of that was always, Nolan Patrick was always part of that. And while they try to figure it out, I don't want to say I'm doubtful that he plays this year because there is a long way to go.
And he said he hopes to play this year.
He said he'll play this year, and he said
he expects to play this year. Yeah.
I would like to see it. The issue that I have with that is that how long before you realize that you might have to just admit that you have to shut him down with this, because the timeline has to include enough conditioning to get into game
for him
shape.
to get his skates under him.
Not just skating occasionally at a practice or something like that. It's more like you've got to be able to, see him go full bore, especially given the way that Alain Vigneault has established the system so far. It's very clear what the system is. Play with speed, play effective, try to make smart decisions. It doesn't always happen that way sometimes. I've seen questionable ones in several games, but the basis is there. The foundation of that system is there. And it's not going to be something that Nolan Patrick's going to be able to learn overnight. So,
but also, Mike Sr. mentioned this team adding something. How about adding a healthy Nolan Patrick? That could serve as your midseason acquisition, basically.
Well, I mean, look, here's to tackle your point, too, about how a successful West Coast trip would be a good gift. Part of a successful West Coast trip is everything going according to plan based on what we've heard over the last week or so with... Okay, so if Michael Raffle is expected to come back almost immediately when the trip starts, that's a good one. That's a good gift. How about getting Scott Lawton back during the trip? That's a good gift. Like, to get those guys back, too, because that's much more immediate than Nolan Patrick. That's the thing. It's much more immediate, and nothing against anybody who has been playing in other roles, whether it's Chris Stewart or Vorobiev or whoever you want to throw in there. But those guys going back down because you've gotten those other guys back. I saw a tweet that was really good during the Ottawa game, and it was very simply, boy, do they miss Scott Lawton in a game like this. And it is true. Boy, Scott Lawton's presence would have been great in that game. But
you know what? I bet you all of those guys, Vorobiev, Obey Kubel, all those AHL guys that are up.
Did you notice I left his name off the list, by the way?
Yep.
Because I do really like him in a fourth line role.
I guarantee you they're happy to be up and on the roster, with that per diem pack rolling in through the holiday season. They're getting that NHL pay through the holiday season, so I'm sure they're happy about that.
I'm sure that helps, and I'm sure,
Merry Christmas, boys.
Well, here's another point of contention for that too. Wouldn't a good gift for Morgan Frost be get a place? I don't know if he's been told that yet or not. I know Farabee was, but wouldn't.
Oh, he was. I didn't even. They
didn't make a big deal out of it, but obviously
they did with Carter Hart.
But obviously, Carter Hart was different. That was more profile because he really needed a place, and Jake Voracek stepped in and was a good guy.
The story that came out this week about Jake Voracek hooking him up with his first apartment was a nice one for sure.
Forgive me because it's escaping me right now, but somebody, I forget which prospect it is. It's a younger guy. It might be somebody like a Sanheim or something like that. I don't know. Maybe they all have their own places, but one of the younger guys is rooming with maybe it is Nolan Patrick. I don't know. One of them's rooming with Kevin Hayes.
That wouldn't surprise me if it was
because Kevin Hayes was with the contract, came in, found a place, and then turned and went, I got this big place that I got by myself. So he invited
somebody come live with me.
Yeah, I think that's where I saw it. It's that and Chris. Yeah, because I know Chris Stewart stepped in there too and has been involved with Nolan Patrick as well. But I think Hayes is actually rooming with Nolan Patrick, which is pretty cool.
Well, there you go. And that's going to wrap us up. We're going to get out of here. You can find the show on Twitter at YWT Podcast. You can also find the show on Facebook, Instagram, Podbean, iTunes, Google Podcast, sportstalkphilly.com, Spotify, all of that. Dom, tell people where they can find you.
I am on Twitter at DomConsul.
All right. And Kevin, give us your little rundown of where people can find you and your stuff.
Sure. So me personally is at Kevin_Durso on Ttwitter.
DURSO?
Yes. I feel like I don't have to say that anymore. I think people get it by now.
I'm going to.
No, I know. And then, all the written works, and including this podcast as well on Sports Talk Philly. Follow along with us in-game at Flyerdelphia. Other articles on all the Philly sports teams too. If you're listening to this and you are a 4-for-4 like I am, then, Sports Talk Philly is going to be the place for you. So it's at Sports Talk PHL on Twitter. Also, 97.3 as well. Go ahead and follow us over there too. I made a couple. You mentioned it on the show last week. I did make an appearance on there talking about Lindblom and all of that as well. And unfortunately, I ended up being horribly wrong about the situation for the weekend where they were not able to play for him at that moment. But
No.
Also at that point, I didn't know then what I knew now. And,
and they made up for it on home
Well, no,
ice.
not only that, but the way I heard the whole story was that they found out about it before the Wednesday game in Colorado. Actually, he literally had to just up and leave the team.
Right.
And when that happened, as Chuck Fletcher put it, no, maybe people weren't able to say goodbye to him at that point. That rests on your mind when a guy's going through what he's going through. Even if it's been 2 days since he found out what he has, and you don't think the worst at that second, you can't help but think about the gravity of the situation.
It weighs on you, for sure.
It's a very real human situation that goes beyond hockey. So obviously that weighs on your mind. Then they had to talk about it going in, and I kind of got to, those were the first clips that we had. Anyway, they were posted to the Flyers Twitter account of players talking about the situation. And they just, they sounded a little out of it, and they kind of looked a little out of it in that game in Minnesota. Then they looked better in the game against Winnipeg, and the whole Farabee thing, as we talked about, happened. And, that's unfortunate the way it happens. But they came home, and as soon as they got some normalcy with seeing him, that changed everything. And, I wouldn't be shocked at all, by the way, if he's at the game on Monday night against the Rangers too.
I absolutely would expect him to be.
And here's the thing, for a couple reasons, because there is a contingent of Swedish players on the Rangers that he knows from Worlds and things like that. So I wouldn't be surprised me at all. I would like to throw out there the thing. Let's give a plug, if we may, to to Biscuit Tees. That's the company is owned by Bernie Perrant's daughter. They're making shirts that the players had them for Thursday's game, by the way, so I did get a chance to see them.
They're really nice.
They
shirts.
look awesome. All the I don't recall many. I mean, we probably got 5 or 6 players after that game. I believe at least 4 of them, probably 5 of them, didn't hold their interview until they were able to at least go change shirts and put that shirt on to be. And I mean, I don't know if any of them showed up on camera the way you would like, but they were wearing them. There were plenty of pictures on the Flyers Twitter account of them wearing them. They set out with a goal of $5,000 raised for charity for sales of those shirts. They're up to over $100,000.
It's unreal.
Even and talk about a classy move here. Even the Rangers, Mika Zibanejad, called the company, asked for a few shirts for Monday's game. They're going to wear them underneath of their jerseys too.
That's cool.
Just judging by I was told 6 players intend to have them. Like I saw that somewhere. So my guess would be, in addition to Zibanejad, I would imagine Lundqvist is probably wearing one of them, whether he's starting or not. I think Jesper Fast is also a Swedish player on the team. He probably will have one. I would also guess Tony DeAngelo has one as well, because he was a guy who very publicly put out on Twitter some support for him. He's not he is not a Swedish player. He is local from New Jersey.
No, he's from this area.
Right.
Yeah.
But regardless, a guy who took note immediately, put something out there. We're with you, that kind of thing. The Rangers as a team were very quick to respond to that as well and put out a message of support. So cool stuff on that. And they are still selling the shirts, by the way. So to people who are listening, because fans kind of want anything they can to show support. The whole thing with Tuesday night where they gave out the placards that say "I fight with Oscar," was great.
Yeah.
I think that went a long way as well. So people who are looking to show support like that, definitely go ahead and do so, because it's, I think it's a great way to do it. And maybe the more Oscar Strong shirts we can get at the Wells Fargo Center, on some of those nights, especially if he's showing up several times. I mean, he was, from what I heard, he was at Tuesday's game. I did not happen to see him personally in the locker room, but he was there briefly, from what I understand. Maybe he ducked off into another part of the room, not the room.
It wouldn't be surprising.
Not the part where the media is, because I'm sure they don't want that kind of attention with it, so I understand that. But that's a part of it. He was at a Sixers game recently. He's still showing up and doing. He's still in the area, showing up, having some fun with teammates. Because he's been hanging with Robert Haig a lot, obviously, because they're great friends. And
he was actually at the Sixers game with Haig and JVR.
Yeah, JVR was there. Yep, that's who else was in the picture, and they, there was a video clip, I think, that surfaced throughout Instagram of him being there and introduced to the game, and it was pretty cool to see people.
I think he rang the bell before the game.
I don't know that he rang the bell. I didn't hear that.
Okay.
Because I feel like if that had happened, that video would have been all over the place, and I didn't see that. But they did put him up on the screen during the game, and that got a big ovation from people who may not necessarily be the target
Hockey,
audience, right?
yeah.
The target audience there, where basketball people may not be hockey people, they may not be 4-for-4s like that, and if you're not, there's nothing wrong with that. Obviously, it's just a matter of seeing the
Sorry,
support.
Kyle, I brought up the Sixers.
No, but I don't profess to be either, but I can keep a game on every now and then, like that kind of thing. But like, regardless, the point being, here's a guy who took in a game, got a really cool show of support, and the whole city's behind him. So the thing with the t-shirts. This is a really easy way for fans to be involved and do something small. It's all of the money that they are making, by the way, is going to Hockey Fights Cancer. So
yeah, absolutely.
That's an awesome thing, and
it's
take
really great
advantage
to
of
see it. It's really great to see a city rally around behind a guy, and we're going to have Mike drop the link to where you can find those T-shirts in the description of this show. It's good that he has some support and some friends around him in this holiday season. And on that note, I would like to wish the listeners a good holiday season for now. I will be back shortly after this edit, and but for Kevin and Dom, this is going to be it. Gentlemen, you have a very happy holiday and Merry Christmas if you celebrate Christmas, and I hope that you guys have a wonderful day with your family.
Same
Thank
to
you
you.
very much.
Same to
You
you.
too,
Same
guys.
to both of you guys.
All right, and you guys take care. I'll talk to you later. And we're back, and this time Kevin and Dom have left, and joined with me today are some friends of the podcast that we really don't hear too much. First and foremost, Mr. Ben Resnick is back. How you doing, buddy?
I'm good, buddy. How are you?
Good. It's been too long since we had you on the show.
Absolutely.
Yeah, but it is good to have you back. And then for the first time since our rebrand, I'm actually joined by somebody live in studio here. And that would be my girlfriend, Miss Erika Watson. How you doing?
I'm doing good. How are you?
Doing good. It's good to be here. And you guys are both friends of the show behind the scenes. You're on the, on the creative side of things, I would say. And we wanted to get your opinions on some of these mid-season awards. It's a good time. It's right before Christmas. The season's about half done. It's the holiday spirit. And we'll talk about the team. Now, right now, leading the team is Travis Konechny with 32 points. Sean Couturier is behind him with 28. Who do you think ends the season with the most points for the Flyers? Erika, let's start with you.
I have a feeling Konechny is going to keep on pushing through this year. I really think it's going to be like a really good breakout year for him. Obviously, Coots and Claude are probably going to get up there too, like they always do. But yeah, I feel like it's the year of TK.
Yeah, I agree. It's definitely been a breakout season for him so far. He is just about point per game. Ben, what do you think?
It's either going to be Coots or TK because, as you were just saying, there's a point per game for TK, and Coots has been doing nothing but kind of leading the way, and he's been doing a lot of assists, and he's just been pretty solid on his play so far. So I really think it's either going to be one of those two.
Definitely, and I'll let you guys know that pretty much mirrored what we talked about a little bit earlier with Mike Sr. and Kevin and Dom. We all kind of said the same thing. We did have different answers for this. We're looking for a combined total for Joel Farabee and Morgan Frost when it comes to goals this season. As it sits currently, Farabee has 3, Frost has 2 from his first 2 games. So they have a combined total of 5. We had some people down in the 15 range for where they finish. Some people up closer to 20. Dom was right around 12. So what do you guys think? Ben, how many goals do you think those two end up with combined this year? About 45 games to play.
Well, I guess it depends on how long they're staying up for because they might even get sent back down. We don't know.
Nah, I think they're up for the season, honestly. They've both earned it.
Oh, I don't know because it just depends. I think Farabee's going to walk away with possibly 10. I don't think he's going to get that much more. I haven't really seen him. I don't want to say I haven't seen him show up the past couple of games, but I also haven't really seen a lot of production point-wise out of him, or goal-wise. And then Frost, I think he'll sit back with about 3 or 4. I don't think he's going to get the amount that we want him to as well, just because I just don't think he's given. I mean, what is he, 3rd, 4th line role right now?
Yeah, he's kind of bouncing around the lineup. With all the injuries, it's really tough to say where anybody's playing in the lineup, but it depends on the night, but he's kind of playing all over the place.
Yeah, I think until he gets solidified with a line with line mates where he can actually sit and actually learn his role and what he does, I think he's only going to be getting he's not going away with many points this season or goals this season. I mean, I don't think he's walking away with a lot on the score sheet.
That's fair, and we did see him score 2 in his first 2 games after getting called up, and then after that, he's been pretty quiet. So I think that's a fair assessment that he might be in for a little bit of a rough patch here. But as the team rolls on, the team is looking really good right now. 5th in the Metro, holding down the second wild card spot. Pretty close. They're 1 point down from even a divisional spot in 3rd there, and only a couple points behind 2nd. It's all pretty tight in the Metro behind Washington. Where do you guys think they finish? I'm sorry, and Erika, I skipped you on Farabee and Frost. What was your answer for that? How many goals do they end the season with?
I would say probably around the 15 range. I would agree with that. I feel like 20 is kind of pushing it. I feel like probably 15, 16, somewhere around there is what I would say.
Okay, and we'll go to you for this next question, too. Where do the Flyers finish the season in the Metro?
I feel like they're pretty on pace. I kind of started a little low on them this year, but they've definitely gotten better since then. So I think they'll probably lock down maybe 3rd, probably more in like the 4th range, I would say, though.
Okay, so in that 3rd divisional spot or maybe the first wild card, depending on how things break down the stretch.
Yeah, something like that.
Okay, and Ben, what do you think? Probably something similar?
Finish-wise, they'll finish in a playoff spot. I'm still debating I'm still trying to think if it's going to be a wild card or if they're going to drop. Because, I think they're going to finish strong. I want them to finish somewhere in 3rd in the division, at least, in the division.
We talked about it a little bit earlier. The wild cards are supremely dangerous this year because in the East, that means Washington or Boston. And both those teams are just so loaded up and ready for a playoff run that, more so than even any other year, there are 2 definitive juggernauts at the top of the conference, and they play in opposite divisions. So they're going to be your end bosses come playoff time for sure.
Sure, yeah, you're going to have them. And then, I don't know, I want to see them. I want to see them push better, but as it stands with injuries stacking, without the injuries that they have had, and with how the team has shown how they played, I don't know if this year is going to be a stronger finish than next year. Because again, half the players who are playing right now, they just kind of got forced in the lineup. So how they work together is we'll see how that works out. But overall, yeah, I think they're gonna. I want them to finish out 3rd in the division, if not a wild card. I think they're going to finish 3rd, but we'll see.
Okay, and we'll see where we go from there. But I just touched on Boston and Washington in the East. That leads us to our next little thing here. And basically, what's your Stanley Cup final this year? Who you got out of the East? Who you got out of the West? I believe I had a Colorado-Boston matchup. But, there's a couple teams in each division who are kind of making really strong cases for making deep playoff runs. And I had Colorado and Boston. So what do you guys have? Ben, we'll start with you this time.
You really think Colorado's going to get there? They've been looking great.
Colorado is a phenomenal team. Nathan McKinnon has ascended to the Crosby-McDavid conversation. He's not there. He's behind both of them, I'd say.
Yeah.
I think he's probably closer to Crosby than a lot of people would think.
I don't know. I can't really solidify this yet. Before the whole Taylor Hall trade, because I think that's going to be a huge thing for the Coyotes, I now consider the Coyotes not to be a bubble team anymore. They're now a contender. So
Absolutely.
I think we have to see how the Taylor Hall trade plays out for him first. Honestly, I would like to see how that goes before I can even solidify who I think is going to get it. But, I was just looking at Colorado's stats. Honestly, Colorado doesn't sound bad. Out of the East, you got me. I don't even know, because Penguins don't even look good this year. You've got Washington, who looks pretty decent. I still think they make a mega splash, and they're going to go in there. Boston, I don't know. I'm still kind of hung up on Tuukka Rask just I don't know, just absolutely just failing in the end. Sorry,
It's
Erika.
tough to it's tough to say that though. After they did just go to the Stanley Cup final last year, they went to Game 7.
Yeah.
They're a hungry team. They've been there before. Most of that team has a ring, and the ones that don't, are pushing really hard for one.
I don't know.
Definitely a lot of motivation coming out of Boston.
Yeah, we'll see what happens this year. But other than that, I don't know who would actually hit the finals. I mean, that's a big question mark. I actually, if I had to choose gun to my head, I'll go Colorado, and I'll probably go Washington.
Colorado and Washington. Okay, I'm okay with that. I think that's a pretty reasonable debate for sure. And who do you think wins that series?
I'm going to take Colorado.
Okay. Colorado raises the first cup in quite a while down there. Now, a little backstory before we throw it over to Erika here. Erika was born and raised in Massachusetts and has developed a liking for the Boston Bruins, and I guess I can't really complain about that. She has the hometown excuse. Go ahead, Erika. Tell us about how your team's going to make the Stanley Cup Finals.
Well, first of all, a little rude. Didn't appreciate it.
You're welcome.
But that's okay.
All right, we needed the backstory.
Well then, I actually agree with Ben. I have a feeling about the Capitals this year. I had a feeling about the Capitals the year that they won the Cup. And I also think that Colorado is going, but I don't think that's an unpopular opinion. I feel like if they don't make it to the finals, it's going to be an embarrassing Tampa Bay thing again this year, where they
Just swept in round one, just done.
right
By
just
the Blue
out of there.
Jackets.
Right. So, yeah, I definitely think that Washington and Colorado are going again. As far as who wins that series, I think it goes long. I think it goes to Washington again.
Do you think social media can handle another Alexander Ovechkin Stanley Cup celebration? Because we barely made it to the first one, I'll be honest with you.
Oh, absolutely not. He's going to light the world on fire.
But they're not going to win it in Vegas this time, so it might not be quite as intense.
That's fair.
Okay, so there's our NHL as a whole. We do have a couple awards we're going to run through. We're just going to quick hit these. Art Ross, I think it's pretty well established that it's Draisaitl or McDavid's to lose. I don't really think there's a ton of discussion there. It's one of them. A Hart Trophy. Now, I went off on a little tangent about the Hart Trophy should be for most valuable, and it's not normally awarded to the most valuable, and it kind of just goes to best overall. So I think it's going to end up in Connor McDavid's hands, but my personal opinions are a little different, and I'll leave that for the main show. I'll let you guys listen to that one. Erika, what do you think? Most valuable player?
Am I allowed to say David Pastrnak?
Spoiler alert, that's what I said in the main show.
No way!
Yeah, he's got 28 goals in 37 games. He's on an absolute tear. He's probably going to end up scoring at least 55, maybe 60. The other answers were Connor McDavid, Nathan McKinnon.
Obviously.
Right, kind of the usual suspects, as it were. Jack Eichel, a pretty strong case was made.
Him too.
A pretty strong case was made for Jack Eichel, and we saw the other night that when he got scratched at the last minute, Buffalo kind of is bad.
A little bit of dumpster fire there.
Yeah, a little dumpster fiery. Ben, have you come up with a name yet?
Yeah, I'll probably mimic the whole David Pastrnak thing. He's got 28 goals in the season. I just saw something about him being on a tear a couple days ago.
Yeah, he's very good.
But, I mean, at this close second, obviously, is going to be McDavid, Draisaitl, one of those two.
Yeah, well said. The Vezina is a little tighter. We talked about there not really being a clear-cut favorite. Jordan Binnington's name was thrown out. Ben Bishop's name, Braden Holtby's name, Tuukka Rask's name. There's definitely kind of, again, the usual suspects contending for the Vezina Trophy this year. Any standout names or kind of just the usual suspects?
I would agree with that for the usual suspects. I mean, you can't really go wrong with Braden Holtby or Tuukka Rask, in my opinion. But I also think that Freddie has a good case too.
It'd be Frederick Anderson in Toronto, correct?
Yes.
Okay, we've been watching a lot of Steve Dangle videos in the house here, so he's kind of just Freddie to us.
Yeah.
Ben, what do you think?
I mean, I don't know. That kid out of Colorado, if he keeps playing the way he's playing, I think he's going to get something going somewhere. I mean, honestly, this is his first year in the league, isn't it?
Yeah, and he's put up really, really, really impressive numbers in the KHL and even decent numbers in the A last year. I think Pavel Francouz is going to get there. I don't think he's there quite yet, but maybe I'm wrong. Maybe he's ready. More ready than I anticipated, and maybe he's the guy to take him. We'll see where that goes for sure.
You're either going to look at him, you're going to look at that Braden Holtby or Frederick Anderson, because Anderson, like you said, he's kind of playing pretty well for Toronto right now. I mean, I think we talked about this earlier. He played every one of Toronto's games,
pretty much, yeah, except for the back-to-backs. We did also say that it's early enough in the season that the Vezina, more than any other trophy, is pretty tough to pick at this point. Just because Andrei Vasilevsky could get hot and win the Vezina over the next 40 games.
Or he could lose to the friggin' Blue Jackets again.
Right. Or, anything can happen. Darcy Kemper can get hotter than he already is.
I mean, he already looks great. That's why I was saying Arizona, man. I think they're going to be a huge contender this year. It's going to be weird.
Devin Dubnyk could put a case together. Matt Murray could put a case together. He could. I'm just saying he could. There's still plenty of season left, and there's enough good goalies in the league. You can win a Vezina with half a good season. You can't win a Hart Trophy with half a good season. You can't win, any of these other awards with half a good season. But the Vezina, you kind of can. Moving on, Jack Adams, best coach. There's some pretty
Babcock.
Yeah. It's weird, but he'll win it in Detroit for some reason.
Always. They'll never let him die.
No, but regardless, there is a little bit of consternation out there. Guys who have taken over a new team and done well are getting a little bit of recognition. And, we talked a little bit earlier about Craig Berube probably should have won it last year, but that voting's done before the playoffs, and it makes it tough. Jack Adams, any dark horses out there? Ben, are you going to throw Tortorella in the mix?
Absolutely not.
You're an Ohio guy. Columbus isn't doing great.
No, that's the thing. Before we even move on to that, I will say this. They're doing a lot better than I expected, because I actually expected them to roll over and die, and they haven't rolled over and died. I mean, once you lose big names like that, especially Bobrovsky, it's kind of funny. But we're going to move back on.
Who's the goaltending tandem? Korpisalo and Merzlikins?
Merzlikins, I don't know. I think, yeah. Who are they? But they've actually been doing. Hey, they beat the New Jersey Devils last night, so whatever.
Jonas Korpisalo has been around for a while. They protected him in the. No, they didn't protect him in the Vegas draft, but they made a trade to keep him safe in the Vegas draft, if I recall correctly.
Yeah, because they let up William Karlsson, and he had his hottest scoring year, and then nobody's heard from him since. So, one of those things. But to go back on the Jack Adams, what's the guy's name out of Toronto again? What's his name?
Sheldon
Keefe.
Sheldon Keefe, that's right. I couldn't think of his name for a second. I think he should get it.
Yeah, and he's one of those guys who took over a new team halfway through the season, and the question is, can he do enough in 55 games to win it, over these guys who had 80 games?
Well, I mean, let's take a look, because I'm pretty sure they're third in the Metropolitan? Hold on.
Well, they're not in the Metropolitan first and foremost.
Sorry. Yeah, you're very much correct. Hold on.
I'm aware.
I was looking at the Metropolitan. That's why I was like, what the hell is happening?
They're second in the Atlantic.
In the Atlantic, thank you. Yeah, they're second in the Atlantic. I mean, they are currently on a what? How many games have they won last?
They've been playing really well, but for what it's worth, if they were in the Metro, they would be sixth. So there's something to be said there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
either way, they have a lot of work to do, but if they win 30 of their next 40 and end up stomping into the playoffs and really maybe even challenging the Bruins for that division title, I could see Sheldon Keefe having a chance, but I think they would need to be absolutely spectacular from here on out. And I just don't see it. They would need to be like Tampa Bay from last year, good.
John Tavares is crying right now.
Oh, listen, he's crying his way to $11 million, so I don't actually feel all that terrible for him. Either way, we're moving along here. Jack Adams, we kind of talked about the usual suspects. The Norris, we can almost completely skip. It's John Carlson's. It's John Carlson's to lose, and that's kind of the end of the...
I think you mean Erik Karlsson.
No, I mean John Carlson. Washington Capitol John Carlson, who through the first 30 games of the season was right around point per game.
Can we put a cap on the Karlsson last name for the NHL, please? How many are there? 3, 4?
There's a lot, and Ben just mentioned William Karlsson too.
There's 6.
Is it really 6?
I'm pretty sure it's 6. Yeah, because Columbus even has a second Karlsson.
Right. It depends on
his name isn't William.
It depends on if Melker Karlsson is still around.
Yeah.
There's definitely a bunch. But I am talking about John Carlson, Washington Capitol. I know one of your soft spot players, but anyway, we've all kind of determined that he's got the Norris unless something disastrous happens there. And there's a similar case with the Calder given out to best rookie. Cale Makar is kind of the answer there. And there's really not all that much interesting going on in that conversation. There's some other names, and until anyone jumps up and takes it, it's kind of Cale Makar's to lose. But you know what?
I actually haven't even paid attention to him.
Well, you should. You should. He's absolutely worth it. He plays for the Colorado Avalanche.
Oh, that's why they're doing so. Oh, that's right. I knew that kid. He took that one hit that one game. I saw that. Okay.
Yep, he sure did take that one hit that one game.
I remember watching it, yeah.
And you know what? That is a perfect way to end this little segment. This is our holiday special. Ben, am I allowed to say Happy Hanukkah? Or
I don't care. You're never going to have me on the show again,
Happy
so it doesn't matter.
Hanukkah, Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays. Start watching hockey, please.
It's not that I don't watch hockey. It's just that it's very difficult for me to keep up with hockey this season. I'm a busy man.
Listen, that's fine. Give me your social media plugs here, and we're going to get out of here. Give me all your business information. And stuff.
I'm not going to give business on this one. Just follow me at Benny the Jet. You'll figure me out. Just follow me on Twitter at Benny the Jet 55. That's it. If you want to watch me rant about the one team I can actually pay attention to, you're more than welcome to follow me for Flyers content.
Oh, we're gonna see Browns content there.
Sometimes
the one
hockey team I follow. No, I'll scream about the Browns because right. I can scream about those guys.
Okay, and anything you want to say to the listeners here before we let you go for the holidays?
You guys will never hear me again, so no, I'm good.
Well, I guess we'll see you next time you're in town. Erika,
yeah, you know it.
Any sort of message for our listeners?
Have a very happy holiday, you guys.
Actually, I do have a message. I do have a message.
Go for it.
Remember, Cleveland is not Detroit.
Okay. I don't know if that's relevant to people, but okay.
It will be.
I'm scared, but okay. We're going to get out of here. I'm going to remind you can find the show on Twitter at YWT Podcast. Please go and thank producer Mike for patching this show together. He's at Mike_Giletto. You can also find the show on Facebook, Instagram, Podbean, iTunes, Google Podcasts, SportsTalkPhilly.com, Spotify, pretty much everywhere. That's going to do it. Ben is at Benny the Jet 55. Erika doesn't want me to give her Twitter account out. Producer Mike is at Mike_Giletto. Mike Sr. is Mike from S Jersey. Dom is at Dom Console, CONSOLE. Kevin Durso is at Kevin_Durso. There's no show next week. We have Mike putting something special together for us. So that'll be out in our normal time slot. So in that case, happy holidays, Merry Christmas if that's your thing. And we will see you in the year 2020.